that's a layup. Temptation, couldn't even phase it. 40 days and nights and still proclaiming the kingdom. Back by the king of kings, let a lot of us. Every time we get involved, it's a job. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, how long? Faith, 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 faith. Ain't even close, how long? Faith, 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 favor. Tiptoeing with this faith of mine. Big stepper, yeah, yeah. Big stepper, big stepper, yeah. Back by the king of kings, let a lot of us. Every time we get involved, it's a dub. By the fall, ain't no drug. It ain't even close, how long? It ain't even close. It ain't even close, how long? It ain't even close. All praise to the Most High. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. It ain't even close. No.
They feel so distant from their parents' generation. They don't believe they have much power to change things. They are bewildered by the wide variety of choices they face. Our affluence, our new mobility, our society's very complexity.
I think that it's reached the point now where there are many things in this society that we as a younger generation feel need change.
This society, America, was organized along lines that structured a white power structure.
Yeah! Being square is out. That is to
We're being co-opted right now.
Right.
Right now, being co-opted. Seize the camera, Schleifer, we'll make a different kind of film. Come on! In order for me to exist, I have to exist essentially outside of the system. Because the system won't allow me to cooperate. My system. No, there's an underground system constantly. We feed off all kinds of people. We are also, we feed off the bourgeois system as it stands now. We will steal, we will rob, we will do everything possible to exist. At the point at which you become successful and you become the establishment, you kill yourself.
Why are you at the Love-In?
Because I think it's fun and I get a good sense of community spirit I don't anywhere else.
What, do you think there's a love revolution going on?
I hope so.
Why do you hope so?
Well, because, we're just up to date. The world has been in such bad condition that love is a very good start to get it cleaned up, I think.
In 1964, I worked very hard for Senator Goldwater for president.
All right.
And in fact, I quit school, and a good many other people did too, and there were a lot of young people involved in that campaign, if you remember. And we worked awfully hard, and we didn't prevail. But I don't think that anyone here would say that we therefore had the right, since we were unable to prevail by rational means, since we were unable to convince people of the correctness of our views, that we therefore had a right, or more than a right, a moral obligation to resort to other means. Violence if necessary. Did I have a right because I couldn't elect people who believed as I did? To say, then I will force them upon you.
Can we get a quick reaction?
I think
Stand up, please.
That purports your point of view. Senator Goldwater may have been on the extreme end of your point of view.
That, my friend, is a perversion.
But nonetheless, the conservative philosophy is abundant in the Congress and the Senate, and the control of the economic factors, the governmental factors in the nation are conservative, so that you don't feel, perhaps, the way the left would feel, the frustration, because in a sense you are in control.
Why are you here?
Because I like Lovins.
Are you a part of the Love generation?
Yes.
What's different about the Love generation?
Oh, I don't know. The whole world just seems to be happy. I mean, when everybody's in love, everybody seems to be so happy here.
How come people haven't loved everybody for 2,000 years?
Because they've been mixed up.
Do you take drugs?
No.
Would you ever take drugs?
Yes.
You would?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm experimental.
In America today, certain people are beginning to call themselves revolutionary. I'm a revolutionary, and I'll be a revolutionary when I'm 50. You could disagree with the laws and the books on sexual activity. You could disagree with the prevailing ideas in the university. The question is, how do you make the changes?
Go ahead.
You said the important thing was reason. And I say that when your mother's being raped, when your brothers are being killed, that the only reasonable thing to do is to kick the man who's raping them off, and to kick the man who's killing them off their back, and by any way you can. See, I mean, there's no reasons for Vietnam. Vietnam is irrational. There's no reasonable reason for this country to be there. There's no reason for the ghettos and the violent institution of the ghetto. And the only reasonable thing to do is to get those people and those institutions off. And the only reasonable way to do it is any way you can.
Do you think this country, at this time, needs something that it hasn't got?
Yes.
What does it need?
Love. The whole people have to know each other, you know?
What about people older than, say, 30? Older people, do you think they can indulge in this too?
Yes, they should.
Do they?
Well, I don't know if they do, but they should.
What do you think older people think of all this?
Most of them think it's ridiculous.
Why do you think they think it's ridiculous?
Because I don't think it can be done. You know, they don't think people can do it.
Do you think you can manage to do this without the help of, say, grass or LSD?
No.
Do you think this country, at this time, needs something that it hasn't got?
Yes.
What does it need?
Love. The whole people have to know each other, you know?
What about people older than, say, 30? Older people, do you think they can indulge in this too?
Yes, they should.
Do they?
Well, I don't know if they do, but they should.
What do you think older people think of all this?
Most of them think it's ridiculous.
Why do you think they think it's ridiculous?
Because I don't think it can be done. You know, they don't think people can do it.
Do you think you can manage to do this without the help of, say, grass or LSD?
No.
You think you need it?
Yes.
Do you take it?
Yes.
You do. What does it do for you?
I know myself better, and other people I know better.
You're not just taking it for kicks. Do you think it expands your consciousness so you can love everybody?
Not everybody.
Who are those you don't love?
Narrow-minded people.
The generation that grew up in the 30s, the 40s, and so forth, what they wanted was security. They were tired of the war. They were tired of the depression. What we're finding is that you can't just go back into a suburb and sit down and enjoy a cocktail. That this society, the way it functions, demands wars in Vietnam, and that it demands racism, and it demands violence in the ghetto.
From a multitude of tongues come the truth. And when you're not willing to listen to what everyone has to say, you are denying yourself the ultimate truth.
Things have been accomplished by groups, the immigrant groups, the workers who participated in the labor movement, political groups. They accomplish things in groups, and they accomplish them by the exercising of power, not reason but power. If you take a look at the upward mobility of all the immigrant groups, of all the laborers who worked their way up to the middle class, you'll see that they did it by force, not by reason. And so that I think the discussion of reason and of rationality in terms of the American system doesn't apply.
If you got up in the morning and went to work and did a good day's work in the 50s, things got better. You got promoted or you got more money. You were able to buy furniture. You could have more children. The children could have better clothes, and life just improved. We knew it was because you went to work. But I'm not sure our children realized that. They saw simply that the clothes got better, the house got bigger, the neighborhood got nicer. And I have a strong suspicion that what happened in the late 60s was that the kids who rebelled took it for granted that life would improve automatically.
Free. Everything's free.
Everything's free. I mean, I think we stand for the destruction of property.
What will come out of the destruction of property?
That's pure Karl Marx. Are you communist?
Well, am I a communist? I don't know. See, I guess in a way I am, because we were standing in Harvard Square passing out poems, and some cat come up and call us a communist and punch us all in the mouth. So I guess I am a communist too, right?
It's going to come to the point where if we get enough people and we go to the room in class and we say, we don't want capitalism anymore, somehow I think that they're going to say, well, we're not going to buy that. And that's the point where reason isn't going to enter into the situation. That's the point that if they don't let the people of this nation run this nation, that's the point where violence enters into it. And I don't like violence, but it's going to come to that point.
Democrats say Kamala Harris is creating a new excitement for voters in Florida. They say this golf cart rally on Saturday in the Villages is just one example of people in Republican strongholds showing support.
We're not going back. We're not going back, just like a tree that's planted by the water. We're not going back.
I'm pleased to be here with you today to say to all my fellow senior citizens how critical this campaign is to helping those who are similarly situated maintain a good quality of life.
What's the most important policy?
Well, reproductive freedom is number one.
Right, and Kamala Harris is going to protect that?
Yes.
And Donald Trump?
Not going to protect that.
Right, he overturned Roe v. Wade, and do you think that's going to drive young people to the ballot box?
I absolutely do.
But it's also driving you to the ballot
Yes,
box.
I have my grandchildren. I have grandchildren. I have 3 granddaughters, and I am here to protect my granddaughters.
My dad is 87 and sharp as a tack. And one of his brilliant ideas was this: seniors for Kamala. The issues for seniors are very stark. It's all in Project 2025. They want to take away Social Security benefits, Medicare. The progress we've made on lowering costs for insulin for seniors, $35 a month.
We love Harris in the springtime, and we love Harris in the fall. We love Harris in the winter when it drizzles. We love Harris in the summer.
Hi, I'm Bruce Springsteen. Friends, fans, and the press have asked me who I'm supporting in this most important of elections. I'm supporting Kamala Harris for president and Tim Walz for vice president, and opposing Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Here's why. We are shortly coming upon one of the most consequential elections in our nation's history. Perhaps not since the Civil War has this great country felt as politically, spiritually, and emotionally divided as it does then at this moment. It doesn't have to be this way.
Voting for our freedoms, we're not going back. Control of our own bodies, we're not going back. Just like a tree that's planted by the water, we're not going back.
Former Congressman Liz Cheney is.
Former Congressman Adam Kinzinger is. Former Vice President Mike Pence is. Former Senator John McCain's son, Lieutenant Jimmy McCain is.
Voting country over party.
So, Mom, did you watch Kamala Harris's acceptance speech?
I did, and I thought she was incredible.
What did you like about it?
I liked that it flowed, that she had a purpose, and she accomplished it.
What do you think her purpose was?
Unity, love, acceptance, all the good things. I'm voting for Kamala. I believe in the people that tell me the things I want to hear.
Poppy, who are you voting for?
What's her name?
Kamala.
Yeah.
You're not voting for Trump again?
I'm not what?
You're not going to vote for Donald Trump again?
No.
He didn't vote for him last time.
Drop the beat.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. Never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. Never. I'm a never Trump guy. Never. I'm a never Trump guy. Never.
3. Let me tell you why I believe Kamala Harris is the right person to become our president. I'm an 88-year-old mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother who believes in democracy. I believe this woman will lead us in a government process by the people and for the people. She is well qualified, 34 years of political experience, and presently the Vice President of the United States, who can get the job done because she has all this know-how, experience, and has proven she is a believer in democracy. I want all of us to continue to live in a government that is by the people and for the people, and I don't know a better person that can do it. There's Kamala.
All right.
The Heritage Foundation, this Christian conservative state that they imagine, it's different Christianity what we talking about this morning. You understand? This is a theocracy. Remember, the Klan saw themselves as Christians. Al-Qaeda sees themselves as Muslims. And the Klan is to Christianity like Al-Qaeda is to the Muslims. And this group right here is closer to the Klan than they are this word. So I don't even trying to judge nobody's religion. Ain't but one judge, but we all gonna find out in a minute. This mandate for leadership then, Project 2025, is crafted in a notion of decline. A notion that in the last 50 years, this country has declined. And that decline has a direct link to our ascent. This is really a racist document, a deeply racist document.
And I can think of no more critical deed taking place today than that which is found in Trump's Project 2025. And those of us who are senior citizens, we need to take a hard look at some things in that document dealing with Social Security, increasing the retirement age from 67 to 70, not making any differential for what kind of work you do. Think about Medicaid. Medicaid is funded by the federal government. And if you are going to invade Medicaid, if you don't want to expand Medicaid, then it tells me you do not have the sensitivities that are needed to protect senior citizens.
My understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. That seems to be more pronounced with the brothers. So if you don't mind, just for a second, I'm going to speak to y'all directly. When you have a choice that is this clear, when on the one hand you have somebody who grew up like you, knows you, went to college with you, understands the struggles and pain and joy that comes from those experiences, and achieves the second highest office in the land, and is putting forward concrete proposals to directly address the things that are vital in our neighborhoods and our communities, from housing, and that's on one side. And on the other side, you have someone who has consistently shown disregard, not just for the communities, but for you as a person. And you're thinking about sitting down? And you're coming up with all kinds of reasons and excuses. I've got a problem with that, because part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly now, part of it makes me think that, well, you just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president.
I'm Ann, and I'm 90 years old.
I'm Elma. I'm 91.
I'm Alma. I'm 90.
I'm Idella, and I'm 99.
I'm Derry, and I'm 92 years young.
I'm Lynette, and I'm 94 years old.
And I'm Fanny, and I'm 87 years old.
And I'm Boyce, and I'm 62 years old.
We are unionized from Union, Alabama, and we're not going back.
They don't understand that the black voter has changed. The further you get away from the black civil rights movement, African Americans less self-identify. So guess what? You got to court black people. You got to talk to them. You got to spend more. You can't simply assume that you're going to reach the black voter in 2024 the same way you did in 1984, 1994, 2008.
Hello, everybody, and thank y'all for joining us this evening on Cutting Through the Culture. I'm Chad O. Jackson, one of your hosts, and I do apologize for not doing this live stream on last Sunday. I did miss you guys. I was coming off from traveling. I thought I would be able to do the show, but spending time with the family was far more important to me at that time, at any given time. But here I am. I wanted to go live on Tuesday as well, but I ended up going on Maj Touré's show instead. I think I'm going to upload that episode here on my YouTube stream, so that way those of y'all who are unfamiliar with Maj or aren't subscribed to his channel can see my participation in that. We're getting closer to the election, so it was only fitting that we continue our conversation from last time. Specifically as it relates to this, I guess, this scolding that we as millennials and Gen Zers and Gen Xers are getting from particularly the baby boomer generation. Now, before we continue on with the show, let me just say that I tried to do my due diligence. I mean, anyone who knows me knows this. Anyone who's followed me here on my socials for any extent of time should know by now that rather than just coming out swinging and scorching the earth in terms of who I critique and why I critique them, I try to do my due diligence in being fair and balanced and basically try to come off in the most respectful way I possibly can. But even when I do that, you still get people who start rubbing their head as if they got hit by a rock whenever I say certain things. And that is certainly true of this baby boomer conversation. Whenever we did the baby boomer discussion Sunday before last, I took a reel from a short from that long extended conversation, posted it to social media, and sure enough, there were people who were north of the age of 60 who were chiming in saying, no, you're wrong, baby boomers aren't like this, baby boomers aren't like that. And even in the description of that particular reel, I say that, you know, of course not all, but there are many who feel this way or who kind of set the tone for a lot of the things that we're seeing here and now as far as social trends are concerned. And so even when you go out of your way to do your due diligence to say, you know, to qualify the things that you say, there's always going to be people who get offended. And I'm not entirely sure what to do about that. I want to continue to speak the truth. I want to continue to observe things and point things out because God has gifted me with the voice, and I'm going to use that voice to the best of my ability for the sake of his glory. I'm going to continue to do that. If you feel as though I'm personally attacking you without any remorse, without any regard for the nuances and the complexities, then perhaps this isn't the show for you. Because again, if I'm saying, I mean, I think even in that video, I say something to the extent of like, of course, it sounds like I'm generalizing, but the fact is you can't deny that when you look at this kind of spirit of self-indulgence that exists right now, if you are honest about history, you can easily point to the 1960s and 70s as a kind of shift, as a kind of transition point into another way of thinking, another way of doing society. How does the size of families completely dwindle down over the course of the 1970s going into the 1980s, right? I mean, you can point to any metric, to any barometer and see that there was a mindset shift that took place in the 60s and going into the 70s that had reverberating impacts, tangible impacts and effects and defects on society. This is just the fact. And baby boomers were the ones who embraced this new way of thinking, this new way of being wholesale. So that's all I have to say, just kind of, setting up the conversation for tonight. Let's go ahead and bring up our panelists, starting with ladies. Ms. Quisha King, how are you today?
Whew. Well, I'm good. It's good to see you, Chad.
Good to see you as well.
Man, y'all know I'm having technical issues as usual. Good gracious. But this topic right now means even more to me because of what is happening personally. There's some personal things happening that this is making this topic very near and dear to me. So not to get all into the details of that, but I will say that from a Christian perspective, and whether you are young or a boomer or not, if you are waving the banner of Christian, you are saying that Jesus is your Lord and Savior. I really believe with everything in me that we need to be even bolder. I think we need to be flat-footed, unmovable, unshakable in our stance against wickedness, against the enemies of our King. Because this is a battle. We are soldiers in the army of the Lord. And if we don't stand tall, stand firm, know our word, be reading our Bible, be discerning, and be ready to battle even those. Here's the hard part. Here's the hard thing. Even those who are very close to us, if they are waving the banner of Christian, if they are a blood-bought believer, the Bible tells us to not dine, not be in connection. This is how serious God takes these matters, to not even be in communion with those who are, it's like a holy ostracism, who are in sin, in hopes to get them by themselves so that they can be convicted. Hopefully, they don't stay there, but that they are moved. And some people will say, well, it's just voting. Like, it's just voting. Why do we have to be that serious about it? Like, it's voting. We already know the Bible tells us what's going to happen. Why do we have to be that serious? We have to be that serious because it is that serious. We are putting people in office who will dictate the lives of Christians, our children, our family, our, those of, believers. And so as a soldier in the army, we have to be good soldiers. And so we can't be waving the flag for our king, but yet supporting the enemy of our king. So it's a lot of boomers who were doing that. I'm gonna just leave it right there.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Quisha.
Yeah.
Hope all is well with you.
All is well. All is good.
Mr. Let's see here, Blanch. How are you today, Blanch?
What's up, man? What's going on?
Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. How was your week?
Oh, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Cool. I'm gonna just say this, right? Most boomers. I know somebody is in the comments not liking the word boomers, but I'm gonna say this: most boomers come from an era where they believe what they were told, and it just is what it is. Like, even if the ones claim to be going against the system, they weren't, because they believe the media. So most boomers believe what they're told. So all of the messaging is anti-Trump, pro-Democrats, and this is your average boomer. Your average boomer is going to go along with this rhetoric. And I challenge anyone to talk to some older people. And you're going to be quite shocked to find out how much the elders don't know, how misinformed the elders actually are. And it's actually sad. But then you also get to Quisha's point, the spiritual side, and you realize a lot of these elders never really had a relationship with God truly. They haven't been, truly they haven't. You talk to them, they're more double-minded than these young Christians are. So watching this montage again, I'm very disappointed that these people took the bait. And I go back to that one guy's clip, and he said, you know, the reason why we got where we were in society is because people worked hard. It was blood, sweat, and tears for America to get to the point where you all could even sit there and protest some nonsense or sit there and be revolutionaries. America, a lot of people had to put in, you know, equity for America to be what it is. And then you all come along saying that you're going to be revolutionaries, and they're talking about tearing down this system. I'm like, and do what? It's the same question today. You know, history repeats itself because folks are dumb. They have, the character is low. These people want to destroy a system. Same with these elderly, these boomers now. They want to get rid of something that isn't even in place. Donald Trump's not in office. Biden and Harris are. They can't even see that. It's just like Trump, Trump, Trump. I'm going to just say this, let you pass it on. I'm just very disappointed that these people don't have any wisdom. And somebody mentioned in the comments, it's a scary time to be alive because the young generation is foolish. The older generation is foolish. A lot of us are foolish. I'm just trying to understand, you know, where is the hope? I guess all we have is people like, you know, on this show and people out there that's willing to tell the truth and spread God's word. But at the end of the day, these boomers, I didn't know it was like this. And I'm thoroughly disappointed and disgusted. Yeah.
All right. So, yeah, I'm excited to get into this conversation and to put a bow on it. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a part 3. Mr. Blair or Chuck Littleton, how are you today, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Just trying to get over a little cold, but everything is everything.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Opening remarks before we get into the discussion tonight.
No opening remarks, man. We can just get right into the discussion. Of course, I jotted a few things down, but I'll just see where the conversation goes.
You gotta give us at least 60 seconds.
At least 60 seconds. Yeah, the guy sitting there talking about he was talking to the lady, and I just thought it was so ironic that she was, you know, talking about trying to protect the right to abortion, I suppose, for the sake of her grandchildren. I just bust out laughing. I said, "This the irony. For the sake of her grandchildren, she wants to protect the right to an abortion." Sitting there talking to the gentleman, he's talking about Trump overturned Roe versus Wade. He overturned Roe v. Wade, right? In reference to Trump. President Trump didn't overturn anything. It's just, sir, that's not what happened. You know, the constitutionality. It's funny. The left, you know, they love to talk about stare decisis. But you know, when it comes to the Supreme Court decisions that they don't like, well then, you know, thank God the Supreme Court got their act together and decided to, you know, do away with that, you know, primitive thing over there, you know, those unenlightened folks that came before us who, you know, made a decision. But no, of course, when cases come before the Supreme Court, they're tested for their constitutionality. I mean, you know, of course, you can take stare decisis into consideration, but that's not the way it works, especially when it comes to your so-called textualist. Stare decisis isn't always. I mean, if that were the case, then a person's jurisprudence wouldn't matter, right? You could just throw a monkey up there and they can do the job. Once, you know, something is decided upon, then it's just etched in stone forever, I suppose. Well, that's not how it works. Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Supreme Court by a new set of justices, and that's the way it works. He didn't overturn anything. but again, try explaining it to these people. And oftentimes, I mean, I don't know, these people are just that stupid, or do they just know that that kind of rhetoric works on people, so as to usher them to the polls to, a vote for the next, whoever the left wing Democrat on the ballot is. It's just, who knows if they are that stupid, or if they're just trying to manipulate the gullible. But I guess it really doesn't matter when it's all said and done. But yeah, man, just interested or eager to get into the conversation. And one last thing, that one lady said that he asked her, could you do this if you weren't on LSD or marijuana? And she said no. There was a famous, I think I even mentioned him before, but I made reference to this quote, but I couldn't remember his name at the time. He was one of the year-old new leftists from Northern California. He was a part of the San Francisco UC Berkeley scene there when the Black Panthers and that whole thing got started there in the late 1960s. He's a leftist, a Marxist by the name of Michael Lerner. Started a publication called Tikkun. As a matter of fact, he's believed to be a spiritual advisor or an advisor of some sort to the Clintons, particularly Hillary Clinton. But yeah, Michael Lerner is quite the figure. He was one time chairman of the Students for a Democratic Society. When you start talking about the boomers and the legacy of the boomers, Barack Obama, I mean, he is sort of like almost like the quintessential boomer president. He was sort of like the first really of his kind. If you are familiar with this particular group that began back in 2008 when Barack Obama first began to run, or announced his candidacy, should I say, there was a group called Progressives for Obama, and they were chock full of former members of the Weathermen and the Students for a Democratic Society. And Michael Lerner was eyeballs deep in that whole slew of folk there. And I'll get into it as the conversation goes on. But of course, he once said that you'll never truly understand socialism until you've dropped acid. And so I thought that was funny. You have to be on LSD, you have to be on psychedelic drugs in order to understand socialism. There's even a branch, a separate set of communism called acid communism. I forgot who's the progenitor of that whole movement, where drugs is quintessential. It's a quintessential aspect of their whole philosophy when it comes to implementing and understanding communism. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, it all kind of goes hand in hand. The hippie movement, the drug culture, and on and on and on. Yeah, back then. So sorry, baby boomers, but you got to own this.
Yeah, you got to own it. Chuck, you went over 60, by the way, just so you know.
I know. It's your fault. I told you. I see. I tried not to say nothing.
Have you all read either in its entirety or excerpts from Democracy in America, Alexis de Tocqueville?
I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What's the last part? You said Democracy in America. What?
Yeah, Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville.
Oh.
You know who mentioned Alexis de Tocqueville recently?
Who?
Jamal Bryant.
Oh God.
Well, he's widely cited, Alexis de Tocqueville, by people from all spectrums of the political spectrum, from all corners of the political spectrum, I should say. I guess the reason I asked the question, and we can get into Jamal Bryant later, Quisha, because I know you're probably itching, because he's been up to some shenanigans over the course of the last 2 weeks. But so you said you have read it, Chuck?
Yeah.
Okay. So remind me, because it's been a minute since I've read it. It's been actually 10 years since I've read it.
Yeah, it's been a while.
What was his I guess his general analysis of, like, when he was trajecting across these United States from, and those of you who don't know, Alexis de Tocqueville was a Frenchman. So as he's traveling the United States, what was his general analysis on the American people in terms of their relationship with the government and politics?
Well, from what I recall from from Alexis de Tocqueville's writings, I like he had a profound appreciation for just the way that our system. I hate to sound like a broken record because you hear this type of stuff all the time, but he really liked the idea and the concept of small government and how the American people can make an appeal directly, to make an appeal to their representatives on a local level, and then from the local, of course, it traverses up the ladder to the federal government. But the fact that there was this, just the overall, just the design and the idea of what a republic means and how it functions exactly, and how there's this almost like this symbiotic relationship, but almost like a perfect counterbalance between like rural society and sort of like urban society. That's one of the things that I really took away from the Tocqueville. And he talked about how the United States had this potential, more so than any other country, to have a long-lasting, ongoing a culture of freedom, given the fact that we had a such thing as a separation of powers, and how you had. Because it's a lot to digest and to unpack. We talk about the Tocqueville and just that one.
I guess what I'm getting at more specifically, because truth be told, I think we can do a whole live stream on.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't even know where to
and
really
everything
stop.
Right, and everything that the book unearths.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm looking for more specifically is, I guess, the level of literacy, of political literacy, as it pertains to the American people in the days that he was traveling these United States. Because from what I remember, I got the sense that his analysis of the American people was that they were pretty high IQ in terms of the kind of government they had and what their responsibility was in terms of their relationship with their government. And if that's true, if that is his analysis for one, and if on the second part, his analysis was correct, my question then is, what happened? What happened to where you have this decline in, I guess, American literacy in terms of what our government is, what it is for, what our relationship to the government is. I don't think it started with the baby boomers. Maybe you all can speak to this, but was it the First and Second World War and the propaganda surrounding it, and the politicians that emerged at the turn of the 20th century? Like, what was this shift that caused this kind of shifting of the American mind, I guess, to such a decline where you get these demagogues and these charlatans and these people who are basically running the country into the ground. That's not to romanticize the past and make it look like rainbows and butterflies, because there never has been a perfect government or a perfect relationship between the government and its people in any era and any regime across the width and breadth of this globe. However, I think you can compare things, apples to oranges, apples to apples. And one of you, I think it was you, Chuck, said in your opening remarks, one of you alluded to, I guess, this kind of retardation, if you will, of the American electorate. And my question then is, when do you all think that started? Like, what do you think caused this shift in American? Hopefully my question makes sense.
Nah, man, that's a deep question, man, because one of the things that de Tocqueville, as you mentioned, throughout democracy in America, he had a very profound respect for the peoples here. Like you said, Chad, just talked about how Americans, the sense of character and a strong moral constitution, and how much they actually understood the responsibilities that they had. You start talking about this whole a government for the people, by the people. He really did looked at the folks of this newly founded or formed country as we were sort of like special, like unique. We were a unique kind of people in this way. And he had a very profound respect for the peoples that he encountered here. But you correct me if you disagree with that assessment, Chad. That's how I remember de Tocqueville's attitude about the American people. And it reminds me, even George Washington, says something similar too about the American people and just about politicians in particular. And of course, and that is, of course, that the people that we are to keep this republic intact. The people have to be decent. The people have to be moral. You asked the question, Chad. Well, what exactly did it? What sort of like began to shift? I don't know if there was one instance in particular, but I know that I forgot who it was that said when folks began to increase or see an increase in the way in which they live their lives as far as their material comforts, their creature comforts, then what you see or what tends to happen is this loss in virtue, this loss in morality. The more and more, the wealth increases, people sort of begin to lose their way. And I think even as far back as the Greeks and the Romans even believed this or thought this to be true to a large extent. That with that growth, with that increase in leisure, comes a vice and a loss in virtue. And so you can look at different eras, different instances where there was this ongoing ceaseless attack against that. And I think it's just about kind of pointing out and looking at one thing at a time and perhaps trying to explain and unpack how it may have affected the peoples of that time and how they may have taken what they experienced in that time and brought it into the next. And so I think it's a very tough question to just answer outright or just put your finger on in particular or precisely, because I think it's a very open-ended question.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Blanche.
Oh, go ahead, Quisha. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a large part of it is the education system. I think when we went from the one-room schoolhouse to government-controlled schools and the ideology that those who were instrumental in implementing these government schools, their goal was to get everybody on the same page, factory workers. These were the enlightened, so-called enlightened people. And their goal was to indoctrinate the upcoming kids into their own minions, to their way of thinking, to their way of life, not to. It was totally opposite of what we were told. Oh, we want them to be free thinkers and liberty and freedom. No. That is not, they might have said that, but that's not what they really wanted. They wanted it was a very authoritarian mindset, top down, do what we want you to do. It's very anti-American. The whole thing is very anti-American. It honestly should have never even happened. Just because of the way our system is set up, or the idea of the system, at least. But that is where I think because it's centralized. They centralized minds, and they had once they got control over the mind. I mean, I got you every day. I have you Monday through. I got you more than your parents have you. I'm gonna indoctrinate you into my way of thinking. Like, it's just it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Wicked, but brilliant.
And Quisha, you talked about I don't want to just I can't unpack and go over everything that I've said before, on my own individual YouTube channel. But I even, talked about, Quisha, you mentioned the public education system, and, you always like to, remind us in the audience about its direct, link to Prussia and, their system. and how they did things under, you know, this Bismarckian way with the unification of Germany back in the late 1800s. And I did a whole thing on my YouTube channel about that, and about how and about how the West, and it wasn't so much that I zeroed in on education, but just overall how the Anglican speaking world became a net importer of ideas as opposed to a net exporter of ideas. And you had to take the German cultural sensibility of nationalism and militarism, and you combine it with the kind of the liberalism or the enlightenment or the French aspect of the Enlightenment, which hearkened more so not on what is in fact true, but it hearkened more so on trying to find meaning in life through interpretation and poetry and artistry. And so you had that going on in France during the time of the French Revolution. The Germans were heavily influenced by the French intellectuals of the 1700s. And then you combine that with this intense sense of German patriotism and nationalism. And then it's like, that's why I said it's a whole thing that it can't even be answered and explained in 2 or 3 minutes. It takes the whole lot to really explain. And you know, Friedrich Hayek in The Road to Serfdom pointed out brilliantly, and he warned people throughout the developed world that it makes no sense for us to put up a fight against fascism and National Socialism if we are going to defeat them militarily, but still go on to import their ideas, because Friedrich Hayek could see the writing on the wall. He saw what we were doing, and he said that, you know, what's going on. And even you saw after the Second World War, and when you saw the labor movement take over Great Britain, right? Winston Churchill was kind of put out to pasture, right? When he made his Iron Curtain speech in 1946, when he proclaimed that an Iron Curtain had fallen over Eastern Europe, he was a laughingstock. As a matter of fact, it enraged Eleanor Roosevelt that he would even say such a thing about Joseph Stalin, the man who her late husband was quite fond of. And so you saw this, there's almost like the world embraced, right, these leftist ideas in the form of this transnationalism. And it all comes out of the German mind, the German culture, and the German ideology, to go back and use the term that was a book, that was the title of a book that was written by Marx and Hegel, The German Ideology. So how did the German ideology take over the West? You know, I mean, it's
I believe, I'm like, okay, we can dwindle it down here. You want to do it? I believe that if we keep tracing it back, we will literally be led right to the garden, to the devil. That's what I believe.
Yeah. So go ahead, Blanche. You wanted to say something though?
Yeah, I think what we find is technology, the advances in technology is what gets people to be dumber. If you think about it, these baby boomers had a whole movement based on, these particular baby boomers that we saw in these clips had a whole movie based on the television, what they were seeing on the television screen. And this is where we go beyond, from the newspaper to the radio to now with the visual and the sound with television. Now the message is more impactful. So now,
wow, that's a very fascinating point. That's
right?
That's
I'm sorry. Ain't nobody like cutting through the culture. That's dope. I'm sorry. Keep going.
But I'm saying, so those, think about the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was mostly criticized based on what? Imagery. You know what I'm saying? So if you think about it, all wars have been bloody. What made this one different? The fact that they were
Civil Rights Act too. It was part of their plan. Let's get beat up so they can see. Even Rosa Parks, she's lighter. Let's use her. I mean, that wasn't the only reason, but yet let's use her. It'll be more visually effective. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying, so I just believe before, people had to know what was going on because it affected their lives directly. But as you move on to the future, like somebody mentioned, with, you know, things getting better naturally, I think Chuck mentioned it, naturally, with advancement in technologies, life gets more comfortable. You have automobiles, you have more luxury appliances, you have all these kind of things going on. So life is getting better. So now your focus is in working and enjoying life. So now you're being educated by not having to go down to an actual town hall or city hall meeting or to speak to an actual person to represent you. Everything's coming through the television screen. And so now we fast forward and you think about today, look what moves folks today. We beyond television. Now it's the telephone, the cell phone. People look at their phone and base an entire thought process and off of what they saw on social media, they just run with it. So I just think that the more society advanced, the dumber folks got because they were now being force-fed information. And then you add that with the schools. Now think about even a school. I know when I was in high school, they actually played the OJ verdict in all the classrooms.
They did that for me too.
See what I'm saying? So it's like, think about how that shapes the minds of all these young people for that to be I'm gonna say this, at my school, when he was found innocent, everybody cheered.
Everybody cheer. Yep. The same thing in my school. Same thing. Same thing.
But it still lets you know that even the media behind OJ wasn't slanted to be negative towards him, though, because me and Chuck in two different places, and all the kids in the high school, my high school was white, mostly white, and affluent kids, they still were cheering for OJ. So
my high school was mostly white. It was up in Connecticut, and they wasn't cheering. The black people, the 2 or 3 black kids was cheering, but the white kids was not cheering.
I was in California, a little more liberal, probably. I don't know back then. I don't know.
That you mentioned that Blanche, when Eldridge Cleaver, when he was writing Soul on Ice, and it was the editors over at one of the leading magazines for the New Left called Ramparts. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Michael Lerner may have been involved with Ramparts, the man I mentioned earlier, but don't quote me. But it was the staff over at Ramparts. They were heavily involved in getting Eldridge Cleaver released from prison because he was given a job with them shortly thereafter his release. Mm-hmm. And it was the same magazine, Ramparts, that in, I think the year was 1967, 1965, somewhere around there, 1966, somewhere around there, they actually published Che Guevara's diary. And then the following year after that, they published a photo essay called The Children of Vietnam. This is why I brought this up, because you mentioned Vietnam. And it is believed, some say, that it was the photo essay published in Ramparts, The Children of Vietnam, that actually, and of course we know Dr. King, his life, his history, I mean, he was a radical long before then, but they claim that it was this photo essay that actually radicalized MLK against the Vietnam War. And so this type of stuff, had an effect on a lot of people. And, we were told and fed a healthy dose of BS about what was going on over there in Vietnam and what we evil Americans were doing to the peoples of Southeast Asia. It just wasn't true.
Even now, though, think about all the imagery from Israel and Palestine. It's the same kind of reaction. It's the same kind of, people aren't actually researching and looking up actually what's actually going on, how long it's been going on, where did it start, who was involved. Nobody looking into that. They're strictly going off of an image of a dead child. Now, an image of a dead child is very moving, but what I'm saying is that this is what's getting people's juices flowing. It's not truth, it's not information, it's not sitting down studying. It is these images that is moving these people and galvanizing them to basically just crash out. And so now, once you've been force-fed all these images, if one person can articulate a message, you're gonna be hooked. If one person can get in front of you and make this sound good to why you're feeling this way, you're going to be hooked. And you notice in that baby boomer video, all these guys are standing up and talking, trying to be cool. But I'm like, what are they actually saying though? They're not saying nothing. They're just talking. Like they just one in their mouth with cigarettes and my shirt. I got my tie with my t-shirt, trying to look. No, man, what are y'all talking about? You have a lazy man's fight. It's strictly off of you wanting to destroy something because you believe it's unfair. You're not even thinking about, if you tear down this building, who's gonna rebuild the building? Who's gonna put it back together? Nobody. Like it's just insane. I don't know. I'm very disappointed with the baby boomers. Not all of them, but a lot of them. I'm very disappointed that y'all got tricked. I understand us getting tricked, but not y'all. Y'all was in the mud. Y'all shouldn't have got tricked.
So Walter Lippmann basically described what he coined the term for what you just described, Blanche, as the pseudo-environment. Namely that journalists and videographers and photographers, they basically go to a specific location, be it overseas or in another state or what have you, and then they report back to you in your locality what's going on over here. And so it's not exactly the truth of what's going on. Rather, it's a pseudo environment. It's what they are presenting to you as to what the facts are, what the reality is, so as to manufacture consent to go into a certain direction. This gets very deep. It really does. So
And I just want to say also with like the police, the shootings and all that kind of stuff, I wrote a piece, like it's one of my first pieces like ever in the Western Journal back, I think it was like 2021. And I was talking about the, how the media is to blame largely for this, this idea that, Black men are just being killed by the police, and, Black, you can't go out of your house, you walk out of your house and you're looking left or right, if you're Black, because the police are just out to get you. It's like, you play this stuff on loop. Yeah. And even if it's one story, even if it's one incident, you talk about it nonstop. You're constantly showing this image, and between the audio and the visuals that people are seeing, they start to believe that this is actually true. Like this is happening, because when you start to see it so many times, it is going to have an effect on you. And that's why when I talk about cults and stuff, it's like, we should never be too prideful to think that, it couldn't happen to me. It couldn't happen. Like somebody saying something to you at the right time, that's your ear gate. Somebody, you seeing something at the right time, that's your eye gate. So, that's why God tells us to guard it, check it, try this thing by the Spirit, see if it is what it's purporting itself to be, because it can indoctrinate you. It can make you believe things that aren't true. Like you will hear people think that they're quoting Trump, but they have no idea that they're misquoting him, or they have no idea that it came from there. People are pulling two different topics together from two different things and trying to make it one thing. I mean, all kind of stuff. This is like the false prophet. The media is like, it is prophesying, over the airwaves, just whatever they want you to think. And unfortunately, older people, because they do have a lot of trust in this box that they grew up with, it was a new phenomenon. They think that everybody's freaking Walter Cronkite. They think that, MSNBC is news, when it's just like a YouTube channel, basically an opinion YouTube channel. But
what is Chad, before you go into the next point, I just like to make this one last point, just talking about the baby boomers and this shift, because they're commonly referred to as baby boomers, but a lot of the baby boomers were in fact red diaper babies. And some people may not be familiar with the term red diaper baby, right? A lot of these coming of age, because when you had that second wave of immigration to the United States, a lot of these people were fleeing parts of Europe where they were either escaping Hitler, or that perhaps they were escaping Stalin. And you had a lot of Europeans from Central and Eastern Europe. They were fleeing from countries that were like the hotbeds of these kind of Marxist teachings. But not only that, but you had a lot of minorities in the United States who viewed a lot of these collectivist ideologies. They looked at those collectivist ideologies as almost like crutches, as being folks from who are coming to the United States and part of some new land, and you know, it was just like this new experience. And so the collectivist ideology almost gave them like this sense of security emotionally, and it gave them a sense of intellectual security as well. And so that's one aspect of it, you know. And when we use the term red diaper babies, what we mean is that a lot of the baby boomers were the children of a lot of these early 20th century immigrants who actually believed in the communist cause, who were taught and reared and were brought up in this environment, and they taught these communist ideas to their children. And so when the baby boomers, you know, went off to college early on in the early ages, you know, when they were young in the 50s and 60s, a lot of them were red diaper babies. And in you know, when you had the Second World War, after the Second World War, the Cold War began. And so many of the anti-war attitudes and sentiments that you had amongst, you know, the college left, especially, it really, I mean, not to me, of course, a lot of them believed in their heart of hearts in the cause of Marxism. But on the other hand, a lot of it just stemmed from pure cowardice, because there was this ongoing fear that, of course, that there was going to be not just, you know, a nuclear annihilation, but, and that's, I guess, worst case scenario, but the best case scenario would be for them would be a third world war. And so there was this perpetual fear that there was going to be a third world war. And so a lot of them really sought to kind of feign this almost like this political allegiance or fidelity to some kind of cause, but it was merely just an attempt to avoid having to fight in Vietnam, because many of them just didn't want to go to war. They didn't want to fight again. There was still almost like this World War II malaise was just kind of still sweeping across the country, particularly with a lot of youth. And we saw at the time perhaps a lot of gains, a lot of growth economically and socially. And so a lot of young folks could not foresee actually going and sacrificing their lives for a cause. Something had really shifted and changed in American life and in American culture. And many of people they just flat out didn't want to fight another large scale war. And so that's what it had a lot to do with. And when you saw when Richard Nixon ended conscription in 1973, is really when the anti-war protest that's when it was over. That's when it died down. And that's when the baby boomer left really, you know, began to traverse into politics and into education when the draft was ended in 1973. That they was over. There were no more peace marches. There were no more get out of Vietnam and do such and so forth. That was over when they realized that they wouldn't have to fight anymore. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there as well.
Great points. Great points. Let's read through some of these supers before we move on with the show. We got one from Martin Towns. He says, "Here we go with the Project 2025 nonsense." I guess he's referring to some of the things that were being said in the montage. He says they act like Project 2025 is Mein Kampf or something.
Right, they do, don't they?
It's true.
Barack Obama is shameful. Should have retired with some dignity, but no, got a shill for the establishment. And what's funny about the whole Barack Obama thing, whenever like I make this point at the time, and I think it goes over a lot of people's head, but when it comes to King was assassinated in 1969, 8 or 9?
68.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 5 years after the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, right? Even though leading up to the speech and for the 5 years after, he was pushing all out Marxism, but he's remembered not for the Marxism he pushed. He's remembered for the speech, which in a lot of people's minds present him as a peacemaker, as a moderate, as you know, basically putting him in the same category as the founding fathers. Here's someone who just wanted to make America great and make America better. And the fact is, I believe had he not been assassinated, had he lived well into an old age and continued down this Marxist road he was going, he would not be remembered for this greatness with which he's ascribed today. The fact is, Barack Hussein delivered a similar speech in 2004, which I don't know what the formal name of the speech is, but most people recognize it as "No Red States, No Blue States" speech. And this speech, in a lot of people's minds, solidified him as a viable contender for the presidency. And of course, he would go on 4 years later to actually win the presidency, win the nomination, and then the presidency. And in 2008, 4 years after having delivered his speech. My belief is that had Obama been assassinated or dropped dead or whatever the case may be, a year into his presidency, he would be remembered not for the socialism that he pushed in his first year, in his first 100 days. He pushed FDR-esque policies in his first year. Had Obama been assassinated a year after his presidency, he would be remembered not for that abysmal first year of his presidency. He would be remembered for his greatness, i.e. or vis-a-vis that 2004 speech. And so the fact is, Obama here in 2024, 8 years after, has it been 8 years? No, it's 2016. 8 years after his presidency, is still at it, pushing for statism, pushing for the administrative state, pushing for globalism. I guess the jury is still out. What would history say regarding Obama? Will they still latch on to this notion, this myth that he was a great president, that he won the Nobel Peace Prize? That should be enough to tell you that he was a peacemaker and he was this, he was that. I think conservatives do a very terrible job in making the case for, first and foremost, their philosophy, their political philosophy. And then, second of all, they agree with and validate many of the myths coming out of the left. And so I think that if history means anything, conservatives will actually help the left in enshrining the likes of Obama as a American hero. And it's unfortunate, but anyway, I'm just riffing, but that's a point, I guess, that struck me in reading that. Super. Got one from Pan-Africanism Strikes Back. $5 super. Thank you. Says, old people scare easily. Democrat propaganda is very effective on them. They prey on people who feel like they don't have control over their lives. This is true. I mean, and that is one of the reasons why I brought up the First and Second World Wars. My belief, in my opinion, although this might, I think it can be argued that this is too simple of an opinion, but I'm going to put it out there nonetheless, is that the propaganda that was being pushed at the turn of the 20th century with regard to tensions rising around the world was enough to scare the American people into having a kind of open-handed posture to this Marxism that was unfolding. It started off in the halls of the colleges and universities and these elite places like Greenwich Village, in coffee shops and saloons, and then from there it reverberated around the country and around the world through newspaper editorials and through the institutions and education and so on and so forth, where they were able to do enough to strike fear into people and say that, look, we need to get involved in these wars. We need to fight for our dignity and stability around the world. And it was enough to kind of change the American mind, as it were. And then once they figured out how to manipulate the public into doing their bidding, they've only gotten better and better at it over the course of the century to come. So anyway, anybody else want to chime in on that before I move on to the next?
Somebody had a question. Pan-Africanism strikes back. He asked a question about fascism being attributed to the right. I'm trying to find his exact question. Oh yeah. Can you guys address how fascism suddenly comes from the far right when we know historically it comes from a far left socialism?
That's a good
I think it's actually more complicated than that, and I think Chuck can speak to this better than I can. But I think social or national socialism is a stepping stone to global communism. I don't think so. Left, right. Let's set that aside, and let's look merely at the fact that the thing that undergirds national socialism is the same thing that undergirds global communism. It's the same ideology. It's the same mindset. Whether you want to call that leftism, sure, but leftism is a mere vehicle as well. It's like the thing about Marxism is it's not below Marxism or beneath Marxism to change the mask, as it were, depending on where in the world it's showing up, depending on which era or which juncture. In some nations that do have a sense of national pride, your national socialism is a better tool to galvanize people around versus other countries where there is no national pride, to where you can just advocate for all-out global Marxism. Again, I know I'm simplifying these ideas and concepts, but again, you're asking a very you're asking a very deep question that, given this panel, I mean, we can easily go for the next 2+ hours just talking about that question alone.
But what is fascism? Like what is fascism? Because I feel like it's hard. My understanding of fascism is when the government and private businesses like our current, like Obamacare, like when the private companies came into agreement, business, whatever, with each other, that's fascism. I know we call it socialism.
Fascism is a made-up word. Fascism is a made-up word, and my elementary understanding of it is basically, I mean, I know Chuck has mentioned the what's the Jamaican guy's name? Back to Africa.
Donald Harris.
No, I'm talking about Garvey.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey, who was a self-proclaimed fascist. It is. So whenever leftists use the term fascist, they're kind of posturing themselves as being morally superior insofar that they are the ones who are concerned about the health, the stability, the comfort, the material comfort of all peoples around the world. Whereas someone who is fascist is somebody who is basically in a dictatorial way trying to galvanize people of certain nations in a very totalitarian kind of way. Not only pushing for nationalism, but in a sense imprisoning the people within the confines of that nation and dictating every aspect of their lives. So that I guess in a very simple Cliff Notes way is what leftists are thinking when they use a word fascism. So
they're thinking Donald Trump. They thinking Donald Trump is going to be the one dictator type of guy to get together with his billionaire friends and control America. You know, that's just
not count.
No, I just did a video recently. I was looking at Kamala. She did a CNN interview. I'm sorry, Camilla. She did a CNN interview with Anderson Cooper. And she was like, can you imagine what it's going to be like when this man gets into the White House? And he was like, do you believe he's a fascist? She's like, yes, I do. And I'm like, Camilla, I don't know where you were, but we were there. We don't have to imagine what it was like under Donald Trump. We lived it, girl. Like, I don't know where you've been. We actually lived this thing. We don't have to imagine. It was just so funny, like her going off about fascism and how Trump's a fascist, and we just couldn't possibly imagine what it would be like. And it almost as if he never was in the White House.
They don't have to define their terms. Again, at this juncture in American history and world history, fascism already has an ugly tinge to it, to where if you just throw the word around and say, look, Trump is a fascist, Vance is a fascist, the governor of Florida is a fascist, this is enough for a lot of people to cause them to sneer, when the reality of it is like they don't have to define what it is. People don't know what the word means. They just know that it's a bad word, and the people I don't like is the fascist.
It's Trump.
Right.
May I? No, just sitting there chilling, letting everybody speak their piece. No, because it's a Pan-Africanism strikes again. I go into detail dispelling the myth and explaining why fascism is put in the right, as far as the political spectrum is concerned. I did a whole thing on it a couple of years ago. It's on my YouTube channel. I call it the title of the upload is America's Boogeyman. How the left uses the term, fascism for their political advantage as far as their rhetoric is concerned. And then two, I think I deal with this also in a more recent YouTube upload I did called The Rise of the German Mind. Fascism, communism, all of these various totalitarian ideologies are all one and the same. I like to bring up the words of course, some of the most famous communist defectors in American history, that being Bella Dodd and Whittaker Chambers. Bella Dodd said that what attracted her to the communist movement, and we have Bella Dodd to thank for this current status of the teachers unions. But she said in her memoir, School of Darkness, that what attracted her to the Communist Party was that she saw the threat of fascism sweeping across Europe. And she thought that the communist movement was the only viable solution to the spread of fascism across Europe. Now imagine that, right? You're talking about the American left today. The Democrat Party is a revolutionary socialist party. Of course, they're using the threat of fascism in order to get you to accept their own brand of totalitarianism, which is communism, which is in fact no different from the fascism that they're talking about. And Bella Dodd would say this herself, that what she did not realize at the time was that fascism and communism were one and the same. As a matter of fact, communism is far worse. Whittaker Chambers would say something similar. You can also read his memoir, Witness, where he says that communism is fascism is the highest form of fascism. It is fascism sort of fully realized. When you say that, even when you're talking about this left and right, the difference between left and right means something specific as far as within the American political context. And the whole concept of left and right means something different within a European political context. The whole idea of left and right comes out of course, late 18th century France, right around, I would say 1789, with the French general Estate. And of course, you had your revolutionaries that would sit to the left in the convention, and you had your loyalists, or those who were loyal to the crown, your royalists. They are the ones who sat to the right. And so this kind of brought forth this whole paradigm, this whole idea of left and right. Now, the reason why, fascism is on the right, even though, Hitler was a National Socialist and Benito Mussolini was a quote unquote fascist, many, the same exact Giovanni Gentile and Benedetto Croce, these two Italian Marxists were the brain children behind Benito Mussolini's fascist Italy of the 1920s. These were self-described neo-Hegelians, okay? But they were, in effect, followers of Karl Marx. Hitler, on the other hand, was a national socialist, but you can see within his brand of national socialism, of course, he scapegoated Jews and others, but there was this extreme sense of German chauvinism and German pride within his particular brand of totalitarianism. And this is where you have a lot on the so-called left who considers themselves to be, American liberals, right? They scoff at this idea of the natio, or the nation, the identity, the civic character of the nation linked intimately to this whole concept and notion of blood and soil, which is where you kind of get the Hitlerian concept from when you're talking about German militarism and German pride and German chauvinism. And so this is why this is how they can paint this picture that fascism belongs on the right within the American political context, because Hitler define the civic character of the nation on its racial identity. But there is nothing, quote unquote, right wing about that from an American standpoint, from an American point of view, because the founding of our country does not rest on that, because race is not what defines the civic character of the United States as far as how we define our nation. Because European conservatism is something different than American conservatism. And so before one can even ask the question or answer the question, why is fascism considered to be on the right, you have to first break down what does it even mean to be on the right versus what it even means to be on the left. And so this is why when Donald Trump, when he says that, well, I am for nationalism, right? It sets forth two totally different paradigms. Because what does it mean? This is why they say, well, Donald Trump's a fascist, because he's always talking about nationalism. Or like the guy in the montage talked about Christian nationalism. What they're talking about is a theocracy, but that's not the case. But they play these little funny little word games, because when Trump speaks about nationalism, he's juxtaposing with the term nationalism as he understands it to this transnational neoliberal Marxism that he believes supersedes the authority of the citizenry by undermining the very concept and idea of the consent of the governed. But when Hitler, for example, was talking about nationalism, he was talking about something entirely different. But racial identity being at the core of our civic identity is not an American value. That is not an Enlightenment value. And so this is how they get away with this, because many people don't understand this. They don't even think about it in this way. And I could go on and on and on and on about it, trust me. But we just don't have the time tonight. But great question.
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. If only there were more hours in the day. Let's see here. We got one from Jesus Loves You, says, God bless the chat. Blanche, Quisha, Chuck, and Chad. Thank you. Thank you for the super. Really appreciate it. Cruz Missile. With the super sticker. Thank you. I got one from Sam Shepard. Says, stay strong and thank you all for what you do daily. Keep being blessed, or keep being a blessing. Thank you. Where am I? Here I am. Super sticker from Patrina John. Thank you. And then we got one from Michelle Macon. Says, who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Job chapter 38 verse 2. As a boomer myself, I guess I can't read with the yellow background. It says, I guess I may have been an outlier who always was skeptical, asking why.
Always was skeptical.
Most of the info I learned outside of school, and then I guess you went on and it got cut off. But yeah, and Miss Macon, I sense that because that was one of the pushback that I got from a number of baby boomers whenever I posted that reel 2 weeks ago. there were a lot of baby boomers who said, "Oh no, you gone too far. I agree with everything you say, but I can't agree with this because, you know, we were working with what we had. We worked hard. We did this, that, and the other, and we actually hated the hippies. We didn't agree with anything that they were doing." And although that might be true, the fact is, even if the hippies were a minority of that generation, their sentiments became mainstream as time went on. I made the point time and again. I know Thomas Sowell made this point. I know who else? James Lindsay have made this point. There's been a number of people who made the point that whenever Glenn Beck, whenever these folks graduated, most famous among all of us would be Yuri Bezmenov. But whenever these hippies graduated, they went on to get at the heads of various professions, institutions, including the entertainment industry, film, television, news, such and so forth. And they were able to systematically shift the undergird of Western civilization, of Western society. They were able to push their rhetoric, their ideology through education and other such institutions. And so even if it is true that you had these outlier baby boomers who detested the hippies, their peers, the fact is the hippies kind of won in a sense, insofar that it is their ideology that it rules today and not yours. We did a show a year ago or so. I don't know if you all remember this show. I know Blanche had a lot of good feedback to this particular clip, but there was a guy who is of the baby boomer generation who said that, you know, I don't know what the world has become. I know I just want to like go home after work, turn on the TV, lock the door, and just kind of mind my own business. And this, unfortunately, is the kind of retreat posture, if you will, that many baby boomers took. They just kind of like folded and just went into hermitry, if that's a word. If not, then I'm coining it right now. And so you just kind of gave up ground. You just kind of gave it away. And you saw a lot of material success in the 1980s and going into the 1990s, to where I think a lot of us became complacent. A lot of baby boomers became complacent. And you just kind of thought that everything would just work itself out. Meanwhile, these, you know, your peers who were the radicals were still hard at work. They didn't let their foot off the gas. They just kept going, and you just kind of like was enjoying life, eating, drinking, and being merry. And so even if you, I don't know, I don't want to go on, but it's you have to take responsibility and you have to take accountability. I mean, the fact that we're even doing this show, I think is our way of taking accountability for the things that are relevant to today. Right? Instead of just kind of taking things as they are, we're trying to communicate. We're trying to set records straight, be they the historical record or things that are happening in real time. Like we're trying to do our part and educating people and being educated, because we don't want to just lay down. And it's unfortunate that for a lot of baby boomers, you see a lot of laying down. And I don't know. I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense. I'm hoping it does. So,
yeah.
You know what's crazy though, Chad, is that even when you get beyond like the hippie culture, for example, there's still this prevailing myth and admiration for that time. Even when you listen to, there aren't many even modern day conservatives that are willing to tell it like it is. I mean, maybe they just don't know. I mean, I don't know, but there's still this fondness that people have about the 1960s and 70s. And even when I think about the hippies, you know, there are a lot of leftists out there, researchers who lambast the hippies and lament everything that they were doing. And of course, they do so with a more conspiratorial tone, because there are many out there who believe that, of course, that the hippies and other aspects of the culture at that time were, of course, these were set up by the United States government, by the United States and military intelligence. The whole counterculture scene of the 1960s, the epicenter of it was in California, in a region of California known as Laurel Canyon. If you go on, and even if you look it up today, even if you look at Laurel Canyon and you look at its real estate prices, I mean, you know, you have to be mega rich to even afford to live in Laurel Canyon. But back in the 1960s, this is where a lot of, you know, from Frank Zappa, the Birds, the Monkees, the Eagles, the Doors, many of these groups and bands came from that area. And there was a place in that area called Lookout Mountain. It was an Air Force base called Lookout. It's referred to as Lookout Mountain Air Force Base. It was shut down, I think, sometime during the late 1960s. As a matter of fact, the actor Jared Leto actually owns that owns that military base, formerly a military base. It's now a privately owned residency. He lives there. I guess he built, I don't know if he turned it into a home or whatever he did there, but I believe Jared Leto lives there, or perhaps those are one of the properties that he owns. But there was a lot of belief that because you had this military base there, and you had at the same time the counterculture movement happening there, particularly the music and the soundtrack of the counterculture movement, you know, all the leaves are brown, all of that stuff had some sort of connection to that. Even, of course, there are rumors floating around with regard to Jimi Hendrix and his folks having this attachment to military intelligence, and of course, why am I forgetting the man's name? Jim Morrison. Jim Morrison's father, of course, was the admiral who led the ship that was attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin, which provoked the United States' involvement in Vietnam. Only we later found out that the Gulf of Tonkin attack on American navymen had never happened. And so you have this weird connection between Jim Morrison and the Gulf of Tonkin. Now, of course, when you listen to the left, and there's a book about probably the definitive investigative work, if you want to call it that, into the goings on at Laurel Canyon. It's called Strange Scenes from Inside the Canyon. It's written by a leftist historian by the name of David McCowan. And you have a lot of them who believe that, you know, that the United States government, the CIA, the military, and so on and so forth, they view those institutions as bedrock conservative institutions. And in point of fact, from their point of view, the hippie movement was in fact a CIA operation that was put out with a lot of these artists who were the children of military intelligence, were put out there in order to get everybody all drugged up and whacked out, to take our focus off of, you know, the legitimate social change that was supposed to happen, but didn't really happen because it was undermined by the United States government the entire time. And the whole hippie counterculture movement was one big giant United States psyop. This is what many of those on the left actually believe. Even when they try to discredit the hippies, that's why they do it, because the true revolutionaries, the true reformers, had their movement co-opted by the fake revolutionaries in the form of the hippies and just the overall countercultural movement. And so there's always this sort of built-in excuse that they have, because no matter what, they still look upon the era of the 1960s with fondness, because it's always the government's fault.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I was gonna say to piggyback on what Chuck was saying. They may have been a small niche group, but they controlled the culture though. So, you know, it's just like today, you know, you have a subculture in black culture in the black community, but that subculture dominates the entire culture because it's in the movies, the music, everywhere. So it's everywhere. So I don't know. I think it doesn't even matter the size of the movement if they can control the means by which the information gets out there. And like Chuck just said, that whole entire era, even if a baby boomer was against what was going on, they still have the fondest times of just the music, just the nostalgia of the time period in the area. So even Chuck said 2 weeks ago that Bruce Springsteen song, you know, Born in the USA, it was like it was anti-USA. I said, let me look at the list of the lyrics. I looked at the lyrics, I'm like, what the heck? Like,
you didn't believe me?
Bruce Springsteen, I said, you communist. I was like,
yeah. You didn't believe me?
No, I believe you. I was just saying, I'm thinking to myself, like, how is he gonna get this chorus to how is this chorus gonna be offset by these lyrics? So I said, let me go read the lyrics. Man, you bum, Bruce Springsteen.
No good, bro. He been a traitor. He been a leftist traitor all his life. Even when you listen to a lot of the old black singers, guys like Marcus Garvey, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder,
Damn
they
Cook.
always, they've been woke before
James
woke
Brown.
was even a thing. Stevie Wonder
Simone.
they've been woke. And too with this lastly what I was saying with the hippies and that whole thing and the Beach Boy. I wrote down here when the lady was talking about being a square is out. I don't know who that was. It made me think of the Prairie Fire Manifesto of the Weathermen. They wrote it in 1974. The Prairie Fire Manifesto. The four signers of that were Bernardine Doors, Bill Ayers, I think Jeff Jones, and another communist revolutionary by the name of Celia Sojourn. All these folks would go on to outwardly support and campaign for Barack Obama, but if you read and I think they dedicated the Prairie Fire Manifesto to a couple of their fallen comrades who had died in this attempt at making a bomb to blow up at this military ball somewhere in New York City a few years prior to. But they dedicated it to them, their fallen comrade, and they also dedicated it to the patron saint of the New Left, which was Che Guevara. But within at this meeting where they came together, and out of this meeting came the Prairie Fire Manifesto, Bernardine Dorn, I believe it was, made a statement where she, of course, praised the Manson family and celebrated the fact that the Manson occult members had murdered Sharon Tate. And of course, stabbed her in the belly, leaving the fork inside of her pregnant belly. She was pregnant at the time. And this became the symbol of the Weathermen, the 4-finger salute, each finger representing a prong on the fork that was left in the belly of Sharon Tate. So this was all supposed to be like this communist uprising against the rich and the wealthy. And Charles Manson, too. And this is why I brought up the Prairie Fire Manifesto and the Weather Underground, because Charles Manson is connected to the Laurel Canyon scene as well, because Charles Manson was heavily involved with a lot of celebrity types at the time, even playing music with them and writing lyrics and songs for them. It is believed that Charles Manson wrote lyrics for the Beach Boys. And so Charles Manson is also connected with the hippie music scene in Laurel Canyon, California. So it's crazy things that was going on back then, man. I tell you.
The generation that grew up in the 30s, the 40s, and so forth, what they wanted was security. They were tired of the war. They were tired of the depression. What we're finding is that that you can't just go back into a suburb and sit down and enjoy a cocktail. That this society, the way it functions, demands wars in Vietnam, and that it demands racism, and it demands violence in the ghetto.
So this was a sentiment among a lot of the baby boomer radical element. The society that they are inheriting from their parents and grandparents is one that requires racism, one that requires exploitation, one that requires people to be poor and in the ghettos. And I don't know about you all, panel, but to me, I mean, when you look at a lot of the left rhetoric today and some folks on the right, they share that sentiment today, that we need anti-racism, that we need CRT and DEI, that we need basically to have a radical or undergo a radical shift in America, because America requires, in its current state, requires racism. It requires exploitation. What say you all?
It requires, what do you mean? What do you mean?
So in order for America, like, so for example, when Donald Trump says make America great again, their response would be, well, no, we don't want to go back to the way America was, because in order for America to be great in the mind of the conservative, it requires racism, exploitation, poverty, all these different things. We don't want to go back to that America. We want to move forward to a new America where there is no more racism, where there is no more poverty, where there is no more this, that, and a third. They see America as an imperialist country, and the form of imperialism that America seeks to push is one of exploitation, racism, such and so forth. And so you see this rhetoric again in the 1960s, and I don't think anything's changed. You know, I think this rhetoric has become more sophisticated. Of course, he's saying it in a very elementary way in that clip, but you see now this ideology embedded in academia. You see it now in lyrics to punk songs and rap songs and even some country songs and Bruce Springsteen songs, and on and on and on I can go. This notion that we don't want that USA anymore. We want a new utopia. We want a new world order that is free of racism, free of exploitation, free of all the things. We believe that we have the proper analysis. We believe that we have the proper scientific understanding of what makes a better world. Give us the reins of power, and we will make America truly great. Is kind of the sentiment that these people had.
I mean, I don't think that these people think.
Well, Quisha, like understanding that and understanding what I just said, I think gives us a better understanding of what Black leftists mean when they say that Black conservatives are sellouts and self-loathers, self-haters, because they genuinely believe that to really become an American is to be anti-Black, because they believe that America is a threat to Blackness, that America is a threat to Black people. And so by becoming a conservative, by identifying yourself with America to some degree, is to be against your own kind, because America is hostile to Black people, says them. So anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, you at some point, I mean, you would want to check, you know, I mean, okay, like, all right, well, here's this country I got, and, you know, it's so terrible. Well, let me see what other, you know, what is, you know, some history of my own country. Let me look at some other countries. Like, at some point, the way in which these people talk about the racism and, you know, America and it's so terrible. I mean, do you not go and research other countries, their foundings? Do you not go and try to compare? Like, I mean, I just don't understand how you don't, if you feel this vigorous about something, you know, why don't you go and just read a little bit? just a little bit. Because I mean, it wouldn't take very much to just, okay, well, America stopped slave, trading in the 1700s. Okay, all right, well, that's a step in the right direction, like just like America was a second country on paper, to
Let me ask you this, Quisha.
slavery.
Just a thought that occurred to me, and I don't want to veer too far off course because I want to get Blanche's and Chuck's response to that clip. Do you think that the ending of slavery in America was a testament to the government or the people, the American people?
Do I think they what?
So do you think that the ending of slavery in America is a testament to the government or to the American people?
I think it's both. I think that the people didn't want it, and the government was like, okay, let's end this. I think there was enough pushback from the people to make this change. As far as the slave trade, I don't really know. I don't know enough about what made them want to stop trading slaves, but I would guess it was probably the people first and then the government. I think that would be my best guess, but I don't really know. But I know, like with slavery itself, there was uprisings. People were pushing back. They did not like it, white and black. They were white people that hung and died right next to white folks as abolitionists. So it was people they weren't just taking it, white and black. That's the thing. Like, black people be thinking like there was only black. I mean, who was, if all these white folks were so evil and racist and they just wanted people to be slaves all the time, like, why didn't they ever? Who was going to change these laws? The black folks? You know what I mean? Anyway, but to answer your question, I think it was a bit of both.
I'll say that I think of the the Magna Carta or the writ of habeas corpus as the basis of English common law. It's where our traditions derive from. When I listen to it, when I read the Declaration of Independence, when Thomas Jefferson is writing, when he's speaking in the plural. He's speaking in the first person plural. Before there is a nation, before there is a community. So when he says we, what exactly or who exactly is he talking about? Before you can have a nation or a state that is legitimate, the people themselves must have some shared sense of identity. And I think, it sort of begs the question, like, well, where does this continuity come from? You have a group of individuals with separate interests. How is it that they're able to find some sense of commonality, right? And on what grounds are they standing on, right? What sort of mutual interests do these people have? And as a result of those mutual interests, why is it that they deemed it necessary to create almost like this third party entity to assure or to bind or protect the right sort of imbued within the social contract, some sense of expectation for one's own or some sense of an expectation with regard to someone else's behavior, so that you yourself know how to go about sort of being in the world, right? When you as an individual, your freedoms and everything else is not something that you yourself can just poof with the snap of a finger, just create it out of thin air. When the things that are dear and sacred to you are also predicated upon someone else's willingness to allow you to have them, to sort of participate in this mutual thing, is something that so many people simply take for granted, whether they identify as conservative or whether they identify as liberal. This kind of spontaneous, informal order, this informal, spontaneous order it was almost like this it's like this weird confluence and these circumstances just all kind of met at one point in one time in history, and it created something that was just so unique. And that's why I think it is extremely easy for people who look to take advantage of us and get over on us. It is extremely easy for them to get us to kind of fall in line and line up for our own destruction, because it takes something more. It's almost harder to do the right thing. And so I think that these people are keen on sort of playing on that. And I say all that to go back to Chad's question, is because when you start talking about, well, going back to race, make America great again, it's like going back into racism and going back into this and going back into that. Well, America, such as it is something that yes, it has an objective reality in the world, but as a concept, it somewhat exists in the abstract because it means something. Americanism, for example, right? It means something as a concept, as a perspective. So to make America great again, what does that mean to you? And what do you understand with respect to America in principle? Because people do bad things. People are discriminatory, people are bigoted, people are this, or people are that. But it also begs an even more important question is, who are you to take that away from them, right? What rights do you have as a person? What rights are natural? What rights are unnatural? And what should the government guarantee in terms of you having the ability to exercise your natural rights in an attempt to try to create a life that is fulfilling? We got to a point where now the government's duty and responsibility is to guarantee that happiness when the government is incapable of doing that. And that was never the goal to begin with, because that's out of line with the natural law principle. Because what is most important is the process involved, respect for the process and not the desired outcome. And so when the government allows human beings, give human beings the space to create spontaneous order, a kind of order that is only possible, of course, when the people are virtuous, well, then there you have it. Give us an environment, government, right, to where we as a people can figure it out for ourselves. It's the people. It's the people. Just give us the space and we'll figure it out. So that's my long-winded answer to that question, is just to ensure that we have an environment where we as a people can create our own informal and spontaneous order. And that's how you do it, But unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that today. Even so-called conservatives don't get it. That's just my humble opinion.
Blanche.
I would say that what was your original question?
So the clip was the guy saying that America requires racism and exploitation.
Yeah. So I think the biggest problem is how history is presented. History is presented from one aspect, and it's negative. It's white people who are oppressing everybody, and these are the historical facts that back it up. The problem is that the history they present to the world is probably about 1% of actual history. Out of that 1%, probably a fraction of that percent is even accurate. And so the history that we have today is just propaganda. It's not really history. It's just somebody telling you that America's bad, bad, bad. I mentioned an example of saying that America's history is reduced to slavery is like saying your marriage is reduced to an argument. Like the marriage, besides the arguments, because there are bad things in a marriage, I imagine you have arguments and fights, but that doesn't sum up the entire marriage. The marriage you have, you build a home together, a life together, you have children, you love each other, memories. There's so much that goes into a marriage. Just
but they would argue, Blanche, that using your analogy there, that it's a 400-year argument is what they would say.
Okay. So it's in a 400-year long marriage. If you were married for 400 years, there would have to be more good than bad. And again, how they even present slavery. Now, people can say what they want to say, but we all know that there's too much happy times that slaves were shared in even the history that we know, where slaves getting Sunday off and a lot of celebrating going on, slaves getting drunk, slaves buying their freedom. It's
All
so
right
much.
now, Blanche. All right, they've been the comfort,
It's so much nuance, even with slavery. Slaves, quote unquote, jumping the broom. Over almost 100% of slaves getting married, which means that families had to be like, it's even with the narrative of slavery, it's still nuanced. I think the issue is that they paint a broad brush stroke of history to just say America is systemically racist and built on slavery. It is impossible, my dear Bliggities out in the audience. It is impossible to build an entire nation off of slave labor. It is impossible. You can't. Too much that has to be done, and on top of the fact that America wasn't totally pro-slavery. There were states that didn't have any slavery taking place. So again, America has never had a consensus agreement on slavery, never. And so at the end of the day, I just believe that how it's presented is that America's history is bad because of slavery. If that's the case, then the entire planet's history is bad. If that's the case, then we can't celebrate no history then, because again, their argument is foolish. What they're essentially saying is because America isn't perfect, it has to be destroyed. That's their argument. Because it isn't perfection, as if America was perfect, they wouldn't be able to even exist in it. If America was perfect, none of the left would be able to survive in it, because they would break the rules they want. Because they would find something to be mad at. Everything could be going smooth, water running, streets of gold, and they would still say, "Well, what kind of gold is this? It's 14 karat. It should be 24 karat." So again, let's tear it up.
Yeah.
So I just think that how they present history is criminal. And again, if you're going to tell the story, then tell the entire story. But they can't, because they tell the entire story, nobody's going to be upset. Right. You can't pull any heartstrings or any emotions. If you get on there and say that black folks own slaves, that right there, it sends the whole room in a frenzy. Not because it's a lie, but because it means that you can't condemn white folks for doing it.
Or that black folks were able, like those who were enslaved, were able to learn and develop skills.
Not the skills, Chad. Kamala's gonna fly down to Texas, and she is gonna show up at your nearest DNC office and give a talking to you. Don't you dare say that blacks learned skills during slavery. How dare you?
It's listen, y'all. To me, the more I learn, it's actually what they're doing is criminal. Yeah. It should be against the law, and it should be against the law, because you can't tell me anything if you're controlling the machine that puts out the messaging. So you can't say nothing if Hollywood's behind you, most social media is behind you, the article, newspaper, like everything is behind your narrative. So it's like I can't even it's not fair. It's criminal. You can't have this much leverage in society and be spitting out this much. Think about it. To get on TV and say that Donald Trump is Hitler, you should be able to be put in jail for that. Like that should be like that's crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. And dangerous for him.
And dangerous.
That's crazy.
Let me ask you this, Chad. This is a question that just occurred to me, and if you can, like, answer the question directly before you get into the history and the nuance, because I know how you do. And I say that not to throw shade, because I do the same exact thing. So before you give us the scenic route, like, answer the question directly and then go on. To what extent does, so if we're going to lay the ending of slavery at the feet of Abraham Lincoln, and you see this talking point from a lot of Republicans, the Republicans freed the slaves, right? To what extent does Abraham Lincoln being a Republican matter, if at all?
I think it matters a lot if you're trying to, get more folks underneath to get them into the Republican tent. I think it means a lot because one of the first things, people say when, you want to discuss politics and, you come across your run-of-the-mill Democrat, and of course they buy into a lot of the lies told about, Republicans and this Republican politician, that Republican politician, right? And then so leave it up to, it doesn't even have to be a black Republican. Just, someone who votes to the right for the most part. They'll bring up the fact that the Republican Party was the party of the party of abolition, or Abraham Lincoln, first Republican president, the president who freed the slaves, and of course they talk about the Democrat Party being the party that wanted to keep the right to own slaves. And after the Civil War, you're talking the Ku Klux Klan and all the things that they say Democrats did throughout the South, all the way up till the Civil Rights Act, or the Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 60s. And so I think it is important for those types, if you're trying to simply get more people to either switch their party allegiance, or you want to get them to vote more to the right. And I think that's something that probably works on some people, I guess.
Yeah. But elections aside, does it matter? I mean, because my opinion is that it doesn't actually matter, especially the more I learn about like the end of the 19th century and then the early part of the 20th century. When it comes to whether a president was a Republican or a Democrat, to see that in reality they were all actually pushing for the same things. The fact is, I think like historically, I thought that the Republicans and the Democrats are actually philosophically opposed to each other. But what you realize in the studying of folks like, Herbert Hoover and Theodore Roosevelt and even Abraham Lincoln, I see a lot of similarity between them and the likes of Woodrow Wilson and FDR and others in this so-called progressive era. I mean, obviously Lincoln precedes the progressive era, but I think he set some of the groundwork. So, I mean, the fact is like looking at my own, I guess, political evolution in terms of being partisanly aligned with the Democrats and then the Republicans, and then to the point now where I'm kind of homeless as far as parties are concerned. I failed to find a moment in partisan history where there wasn't something sinister at play. And I think this is true when you're looking at the parties as a collective, although I can point to individuals within the parties, both the Republican and Democrat parties, who I feel were wholesome in what they were trying to do. So it's I don't know, the way that my mind works, and I think you're the same way, is that whenever we have discussions and debates over parties and which party is the best, I think that there's a case to be made that the Republican Party is better, but I think that that's only a fraction of the conversation that needs to be had. Because I think the more important conversation is what drives these politicians. What was their goal? What was their agenda? What was their philosophy? To what extent did they agree with the Constitution? To what extent did they disdain the Constitution? I think that's a more important conversation that nobody's willing to have. So,
anyway. I mean, you're absolutely right. I was trying to put myself into the shoes of just somebody
who's trying to recruit people to the party.
Just these talking points that the Democrat Party, filibustered the Civil Rights Act and all this stuff, and that the Civil Rights Act wouldn't have passed without Republican support. These kinds of things, how important is it to that whole cause? But just when you're talking about having a true understanding of American history, Abraham Lincoln is, like you said, how important is it to Abraham Lincoln's life, legacy, and contributions that he made to this country? How important is it the fact that he was a Republican within the grand scheme of things? Listening to you just lay that out there, not much. Especially when you consider that era. I think you brought up Hoover, and you compared him to Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt. Even someone, you talk, and you hit the nail on the head. You talked about a person's allegiance to the Constitution. For me, for my money, for example, someone who I thought who displayed great fidelity to the Constitution and had much restraint particularly when it came to expanding the federal government, was someone like President Grover Cleveland.
Oh, Cleveland, yeah.
Yeah, Grover Cleveland, was a Democrat, and if I were ranking presidents, Grover Cleveland would be near the top of my list as a Democrat. And so, and just with the Civil Rights Act, the Civil Rights era, many of the segregationists in the Dixiecrat South who were Democrats, we don't listen to them individually. We don't listen to the claims that they were making and why they were opposed to this movement. We just look at them as racists who just didn't want blacks and whites to intermingle, but that was not the case at all. There was
I've been told that Andrew Jackson was a tyrant, that he was just I look into Andrew Jackson, I'm like, there's a lot I like about
there's lots to like about Andrew Jackson.
Same is true of like Bull Connor and Bull Connor is like, I kind of get the point that he was making, but anyway, go ahead.
That's it, bro. There was a governor, perhaps not as controversial as Bull Connor, but a Florida governor by the name of C. Ferris Bryant, who he made a famous speech in opposition to the Civil Rights Act. He talked about a person's First Amendment rights, right, freedom of association, and the right to discriminate. He talked about that if a consumer has the right to discriminate, if a consumer can choose where they want to spend their money, then a shop owner or shopkeeper should have the same right to deny service. And he said that they should have the right to do so for any reason. He said it doesn't matter if the person is black. Well, he said that, I wish I knew it verbatim. I may have it in my cache of notes and sources of stuff that I got stashed away on my computer somewhere. But he said something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing him. He said that I don't care if I don't like the fact that somebody has a mustache. No slight to my boy Blanche, but he said that if you got a mustache, if y'all don't like your mustache, I should have the right to refuse to contract with you, to do business with you, and to have and to provide you service, because that's the American way. What are we doing? And you have these same conservatives. This is my last point. This reminds me of this. Right, conservatives, we decry and we bemoan political correctness. We just, oh my God, it's just this, it's a cancer on our nation, our society. It's just like you can't tell the truth anymore. It's just, no one has the courage needed in order to tell the truth, because we've been so paralyzed by political correctness. And these same exact conservatives, many of them, you'll ask if they support the 1960s, if they support MLK in the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement, they'll tell you that they do. But political correctness, as an offshot of that, the Civil Rights Movement gave rise to political correctness, because what legislation so often does is that it falls in line with the chess pieces fallacy, which suggests that human beings are inanimate objects that you can get a desired outcome from by simply moving them around as if they are pieces on a chessboard. But human beings are not that way, because human beings and human nature is far more dynamic than our policymakers seem to believe. And so when they implemented all of these laws and LBJ's Great Society programs, right? When you didn't get the results that you thought you were going to get. There was not this nirvana. There was not this kumbaya by all measures, at least the measures that they like to look at. Things got worse, racial polarization, wealth and income polarization, and so on and so forth, right? Because human beings still, in their minds, did not do what they were supposed to do, then that's when you really begin to see political correctness ratchet up. Because human beings have to change. Yeah, because if you're not going to let the market regulate human behavior and dictate how we interact with one another, thus fostering more cooperation and more kinship, due to the fact that someone is a person of value because they have something of value that you yourself can benefit from, but at the same time, you do not have the right to take. Kinship, respect, appreciation, and eventual love and genuine friendship is fostered when we as individuals learn how to cooperate with one another, because we're all working towards a common cause that benefit us individually. That's what the market does. But when you try to bypass the market by implementing legislation, then guess what? People don't learn each other. The kinship is not natural. And then you have to impose even more restrictions upon the things that they say in an attempt to try to change the way they think, because you didn't allow the market to change the way they think. You tried to do it through legislation. And as a result, you now have to legislate the way they speak, because the way they speak is a reflection of how they think. So now you want to legislate and restrict and regulate their thoughts because you didn't let the market do it. Because the market, in fact, is the only thing that could have done it. At least had done it in the right way.
I think Republicans, just in general, are they, I guess maybe this is a question, are they falling into the same problem that boomers did? That they were looking at the TV, they were looking at everything going on, and they thought, and their constituents were like, yeah, this is what we want. They are being, their office is being called, I would imagine that, their offices probably were being called when the Civil Rights Act was up for a vote, and their constituents were like, this is what we want, because they too are being propagandized by the media. And then my other question, I guess, would be, are we looking for perfection from the Republican Party too? Like the Bliggities are looking from America, looking for this perfect, and y'all know, let me just say this first. I have a huge problem with a lot of things that Republicans do. I've gone up against my own local government, even running for chairman of the party here, all that. So I think everybody's Republicans are weak and not serious in many cases. But at the same time, are we looking for perfection? Because it's never, even if we had principled conservatives, for the most part, we're still not going to get, it's not going to even, it's just not going to be what we want, so are we looking for perfection from them too?
Yeah, I just think that I can't give an indictment to the parties because people join for all different kind of reasons. Most of them are genuine, but I just think that if you have any group of people that are involved in some type of governing body, there's just going to be corruption because of human nature. It just is what it is. Somebody's going to see an opportunity. Somebody's going to be able to get in somebody's ear. If you watch, I tell people a great show to watch was like Game of Thrones, where you watch and see how somebody can be one way here, another way over here, it's just so much maneuvering, and it just depends on who's good at what they're doing. I think that most people, for the most part, they have good intentions. I mean, they want their beliefs or ideas to be the ones to go forward through America to quote unquote make it better. But at the end of the day, you know, the line does get drawn in the sand on what is causing you to compromise your principles and compromise your morals and your standards. And I think that that's where we are now with politics, because now politics is something else. Now they're asking you to go against your literally your very existence. Like Chuck mentioned, the lady said, I want to be able to make sure that my great grandchildren can have abortions. So you're advocating for the end of your legacy, just the end of your legacy, just to be done. Like, so again, what politics is now is just emotional, sensational, just it is so, because Donald Trump is such a polarizing figure, it's almost inevitable that politics has become this because of who he is. So the fact that he's a larger than life character, then you have somebody trying to go against him. Anybody going against him has to be insane in the sense that they have to be over the top in what they're doing just to counteract his, what you would call star power. And so I don't know. I think that where we are in politics today is where we've never been before in the history, because we have a bunch of people that have a lot of information in front of them, but they're illiterate and they're dumb. So I mean, I'm sorry. So what do? You got everybody has a microphone, everybody has a platform, everybody has a voice, everybody, like, it's just it's insanity. And so now this stuff is going to come to a head because somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to win this whole thing, and I think what we're going to see, to answer Chad's question, is that uni-party is going to be on its way. Because if we look at it now, Republicans and Democrats agree more on what they disagree on. They disagree on the insanity parts, but all the other small stuff, they pretty much don't differ on that stuff. Like, you know, 9-month abortions, of course, trans in the schools, of course, controlling the market, of course, but you got to think, they agree on the history. They agree that something's wrong with America. They agree that things have to change. All these slogans, they agree that America needs to go. Like, all of these people, like, so they agree with the nonsense. They agree with it. Now, their approach may be different, but they agree with the premise. And to me, it seems like Republicans more so want to get along with the left more than making the divide bigger. My thought is, I would rather to be a more of a seven. Like, I'd rather y'all say we don't fool with y'all. Oh, good. We don't fool with y'all.
We don't mess with you.
So now if we come together on, so now when you come together on an issue, it's legitimate. If y'all don't agree at all, y'all come together on something for a bipartisan issue, now it's legit, because guess what? We don't fool each other at all. But when y'all are shaking hands back in the back room and tiptoeing back and forth across, it's foolishness. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, here's what I want to say to
I found this little piece of history in Walgreens. I thought it was pretty cool. So if y'all, I think this is a limited edition. I'm like, who made this? It's like Donald Trump's own magazine. I was like, I gotta get that. So a little piece of history. I mean, because it was so cool. It's like it's a lot of just different things about his life in here. Also, before, just I want to get this in. If you haven't voted, make sure you vote. And my daughter, my oldest daughter, we voted. So I just wanted to say that. Sorry, Chad.
Well, here's what I'll say to your point, Quisha. It's not so much a question over desiring perfection from one party or another, at least not for me. It's more the case that this insisting upon partisanship and the dueling of the parties breeds in the American people intellectual laziness, and by extension of that intellectual laziness, civic disinterest. And so when you can just kind of condense everything down to Republican versus Democrat, this creates the appropriate amount of static and camouflage for politicians to take advantage of the people, to take advantage of the country. Because if my hopes and dreams for the country in which I live is basically caught up in what the Republicans do versus what the Democrats do, then you really don't have any kind of say or kind of political fodder to really require these politicians to be representative of your different pockets of society, because it's just what the Republicans want, right? And the fact is, when it's that way, then it becomes a thing of what the interest of the donors are and what the interest of the shadow government, if there is such a thing, is, more so than what the interests of the various pockets of the country desire and what they want and what they don't want. And so for me, it's like when we latch ourselves onto the slogans that are being put out by either dueling side, by either dueling party, as opposed to thinking genuinely through the various topics, the various issues, and saying, well, we don't actually want to be involved in that as a country, or we don't, you know what I mean? This is, we feel like the government is not doing enough in this respect or that respect. Those voices become like they become non-existent or ignored outright because people are so focused on R versus D. And I understand that, you know, that politics is very complex. It's a very intertwined and nuanced thing. And most of us, we go to work every day. We have our families to care about, this, that, and the third. But I feel like this kind of handed to us kind of like R versus D, blue versus red. We're content with saying, okay, Republicans, they are for my interests, Democrats aren't. And it's actually, I think the preserving of the republic requires more than that. It is basically the point that I'm trying to make. And so again, what I'm simply trying to do is introduce into the conversation, hey, why are we content with Republican versus Democrat? Why are we not looking at, well, what does it mean to be a Republican? Like, what is that? What is a republic? What does that mean? What does it mean to be a Democrat? What's a democracy? What does that mean? And again, I think that like Republicans and Democrats, when it comes to Republicans in particular, there is no fidelity. So you know, Quisha, just as well as I do, as someone who worked in local politics, that when it comes to the grassroots people, they genuinely believe in the platforms that they come together and agree upon. They genuinely believe that. Now, my question is, do the politicians genuinely believe the platform that's put together by the grassroots? They might campaign on those topics. They might campaign on those talking points, but there's no real interest in the platform. There's no real interest in what the grassroots people come together and say, this is what we want our government to do. There's no real interest. So again, it's just a simple fact of they're going to propagandize. They're going to do all these things because we allow them to. We let them because, hey, at least you're a Republican. And so I think that the question of whether or not we require perfection is kind of a moot point, with all due respect, because again, it creates the needed camouflage, the needed static for these politicians to kind of fly under the radar because at least I'm a Republican.
So here's what I when you're saying Republican there, I'm thinking more very much generally speaking, because there are plenty of opportunities to get involved locally, that where you can research, where you can, you absolutely can vet a lot of these people who maybe they will start out at soil and water and work their way up to mayor and then governor and then, Senate and Congress, and nobody's paying attention to these people. So when we say Republican, Democrat, like, we got a long way before we're even talking about, just the presidency. A lot of people aren't even like precinct captains. They're not even precinct. Like, we're not even like, forget. I don't even think it has anything to do with the parties themselves. There are many, many layers, many, many ways that we can be involved for our republic locally, which honestly affects you. Well, now I think federally affects you a lot too, but generally speaking, locally, you are very much affected by these things. And there are so many people who do not get involved at all. They're not, signing up to be poll watchers, workers. They're not involved at all, and they only talk about federal politics. There's so much more to this whole machine of Democrat and Republican and that we're not participating in. So I mean, I'm just like, it is we've totally abdicated that our post, you know, and when these positions are empty, they're nobody is there. And so it's not my beef is not even with the parties themselves. I mean, I understand the problems with it, but I'm just saying, like, we're not even getting involved locally where you actually could make a difference. Like, you actually could get your local party in line. There are some people who were bold enough in Florida to do it. They've done it, and they are changing who is actually being elected. They are changing who they are supporting or not supporting. You know, I mean, a lot of us, like, I don't donate to the RNC anymore. I'm not doing. You can't. I'm not giving you a dime, not one dime. You know, I will donate to specific candidates, but I am not donating to the party at large anymore. No, I will donate to candidates. And that is one of the ways that I, you know, feel like I can push back, because the money thing is a whole other thing. That is a huge part of it. When you have somebody who is, you know, who they've groomed, this happens a lot. Oh, you're up next. Because they are forecasting out who they want to sit in certain seats, you know, for the next few elections. And if we're not involved in we don't even know. We don't, half of the time, we don't even know who they're planning on pushing on us. And sometimes all it takes is checking their voter record. Well, shoot, you voted for everything that I'm against. But trying to tell some of these people who have been, you know, involved in politics for so long, and especially getting younger people involved, the older people, they are very much, oh, this is the party and this is what we got to do, you know, but they're the ones door knocking. The older people are the ones who will actually get out there and door knock. The older people are the ones who actually, I mean, I don't know how much phone banking is how influential it is, but they will go and sit there for 3 and 4 hours and make calls. They will get out and do the work. It's hard to get young people, and when I say young, I'm talking about like my age, to actually get people to participate. So we could really be doing a lot more, but we're not. So I don't even. I'm like, is it the party thing? It's us. It is us. It's our The problem is us.
Chad, let me let me comment on what you said, if I may. You know what I thought of listening to you. You know, when somebody had asked us, they weren't genuinely seeking an answer. The question was the point when they asked us, how much did they say? How much are we getting paid? How much are we getting paid to keep Black people away from MAGA? Right. I think that's, you and I kind of have an understanding, because I think this is where, you know, what you're getting at. And this is the kind of stuff that, like, really beginning to grind my gears. Of course, I will, full disclosure, will say that, yes, I haven't voted yet. I think early voting just started in Michigan. I think Friday, I'm not sure. But anyway, or I might just wait till election day. But full disclosure, you know, I do plan on voting for Donald Trump and, you know, the Republican candidates for Senate in my state and so on and so forth. But I can't help but get frustrated every time I see someone, because Chad mentioned, he talked about people being intellectually dishonest or intellectually lazy. You see so many folks who just are either supporting the party or supporting Trump, and especially on social media, a lot of your run-of-the-mill content creators, they put out content, they put out information, and they celebrate every single solitary thing as if it's a win, and they don't look at things critically in terms of what does this mean for the future of conservatism in America. I've said this on this channel and I'll say it again, that where will we go from here in the next 4 years with regard to all of this newfound union support that Republicans are receiving? When are conservatives going to begin to have a serious conversation about unions and their effects on American productivity, their effects on the American economy, arguing over the constitutionality of union maneuvering, and so on and so forth? And how, of course, going back to FDR and his signing into law of something referred to as the Wagner Act, which pretty much made unions immune from antitrust legislation. I can go on and on and on. If you can't tell, I despise unions. There is almost nothing more I think should be illegal, unconstitutional. It is downright immoral what these unions can do out in the open and actually get away with. It is disgusting. But yet still, when we found out that Teamster members were in support of Donald Trump, for the sake of the party, we all celebrated because the Teamsters wouldn't come out and support Kamala Harris. But now what are the Republicans going to do now with all of this union support? Are they going to, because when you shut them down at the door, what are you going to do? Drive them back into the arms of the Democrat Party? I'll give you another example. I'm sitting back and I'm seeing everybody's talking about here in Michigan. People are saying, well, Arab Muslims aren't supporting Kamala. So this is helping Trump a lot, particularly in the swing state of Michigan, right? Did you all see the panel that they just did on MSNBC when they sat those Arab Muslims down, Arab Americans, and asked them were they supporting Kamala? And it was about 4 or 5 of them. They said, no, we're not supporting Kamala. I said, well, which one of you are supporting Trump? The one young lady raised her hand and said she's voting for Trump. And they asked her, why are you supporting Trump? She simply said that, well, there is no way that I'm going to support a candidate who supports genocide. Now, of course, what is she talking about? She's talking about the genocide of the so-called Palestinian. And so when they asked the rest of the Arab Muslim Americans, for who were they voting for because they weren't voting for Kamala, guess what they all said? They're voting for Jill Stein. Now, if you don't know who Jill Stein is, well, then I'll just let you go out and figure out who she is on your own time. She is nothing more than a Democrat with a maskless Democrat. She is what the Democrat Party actually is, as opposed to your so-called Democrats that are still trying to come off and feign respectability by pretending to be a member or a representative or a representative, that belongs to one of the traditional political parties here in America, right? But she's a leftist. They support the left, but they don't want to support the Democrat because all of this much ado going on in the Middle East right now happened under a Democrat politician's watch. And so we don't want to support the VP incumbent because she is supporting genocide. No critical thinking. Is that what many of you folks support? Is that the kind of Arab Muslim support that you want? But you're willing to sell your soul if it means helping the Republican Party. Or how about all of this new black support that Republicans are getting? You see, it's one thing to sit up here and say, well, I'm just a disaffected, I am a disenchanted former Democrat. All right, but where do you go from there? Because what has really changed in you? Has your soul changed, first and foremost? Has your mind changed? No. You just think that the Republican Party is going to give you something that Democrats didn't give you. But how much did you actually change? I'm seeing all of these, folks like Benny Johnson. Yeah, I'm gonna name names. Guys like Benny Johnson every single solitary day. These clips, these man on the street moments of these niggas in the hood. Yeah, we Trump, cuz. We team Trump around here, cuz. Like they just went through some great political awakening. Now all of a sudden they've become something to these new men, these new creatures, these new citizens, these new people that they weren't the day before. But you're going to have to deal with these guys eventually. So don't say I didn't warn you, because I know them better than you know them. So what you going to do when they start showing up hat in hand? What you going to do then? Because if you don't give them what they want, you're going to drive them right back to the arms of the Democrats. So what have you really accomplished? Are you going to show them how we do things over here? Or are you going to show them how things should be done? Are you going to placate them just to kind of keep them in your midst for the sake of their vote in the future? I wonder, what are we even talking about? Republicans believe in patronage, subsidies, and so on and so forth. They just want to do it for certain people, or they want to do it for certain reasons. I don't believe in damn near subsidizing anything. You want to do it, you do it on your own. Or we need to use the power of the federal government to try to subsidize and incentivize more traditional values, for example, like marriage. Could give tax breaks to that. No federal handouts or incentives to do nothing. You want to do it, you do it on your own.
There you go.
That's the only way that America can remain what it is. But as long as we can get Trump in office, we'll take radical pro-Palestinian communists. We'll take a radical pro-labor socialist union members. We'll take, ignorant black folks that want to let their cousins and them out of prison for the sake of, whatever, criminal justice reform.
Yeah.
We'll take them. We'll take them. Yeah, because people are starting to wake up and realize that the Democrats aren't for them. What the hell does that even mean?
Yeah.
We don't even ask these questions. That's what Chad meant when he said intellectual dishonesty. That's what he meant. Correct me if I'm wrong, my brother.
No, you're absolutely right. And to go back to the first point that Quisha made, because the second one I think we exhausted, but the first point in terms of like why the and she didn't put the question this way, but this is how I heard it, which is why the Democrats are more successful than the Republicans in terms of galvanizing people around their cause and kind of moving America in the direction they wish it to go. I think you can't have that conversation without thinking about and acknowledging the kind of influence that Vladimir Lenin had on the way politics is done, specifically as it relates to organizing and using media and propaganda to really influence public opinion. He wrote extensively about the science of political organizing. So too did Leon Trotsky and others in the Frankfurt School and other such people. But Vladimir Lenin, people like to talk about Marx and Marxism, but they don't talk about Leninism and how again, like organizing people. This is how you get things done. They have the time, they have the resources, they have the desire to gather up for themselves numbers to, in a sense, put pressure on politicians to do what it is they wish them to do. And I think that's more or less what Quisha was alluding to when she said, in the same way that boomers are influenced by the television, that's pretty much the current state of the Republican Party, where they are influenced by what they believe to be the public sentiment. Oh, the public wants this. No, it's not so much that the public wants this. It's more so that there's been organizing efforts, on the ground level to push and to make it appear as though this is what the American people want. When in reality, no, they're just really good at organizing people for destruction. So let's move quickly to this next clip. I know the hour is getting late.
I have to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get going here. I'm way over my time.
Okay. Yeah, you want to bounce out now, or you want to respond to this clip first?
Yeah, I'll respond to this clip and then. Yeah.
Okay. Where to go? Here it is.
Former Congressman Liz Cheney is. Former Congressman Adam Kinzinger is. Former Vice President Mike Pence is. Former Senator John McCain's son, Lieutenant Jimmy McCain is. Voting country over party.
So again, feeding into I guess what we were just talking about for the last hour. but feeding into.
I'm sorry, Chad. Did you catch that shirt that lady had on? The
vote.
It had the fallopian tubes and the fist.
Your fallopian tubes are on a shirt. Girl.
I just noticed that.
Like
I'm
that
sorry. Go
is
ahead.
just
The Voltron awoke. She had all of her. She had all of them on there.
But my point is showing that clip is this. And Quisha, I'd like to get your response because I know you got to go. But you know, like cringiness of that clip aside, they're invoking such folks as Mike Pence and Liz Cheney and others. I mean, we all know the late Colin Powell endorsed and voted for Barack Hussein Obama. The fact is like these are people who we've all been told growing up, oh yeah, they're Republicans, these boomers, yeah, they're Republicans, and it's like if you are a principled so-called Republican or a principled so-called conservative, how do you vote for someone who is the epitome of Leninist Marxism? You know what I mean? In the person of Kamala Harris. And so again, there is no principle, there is no fidelity to an idea or to a philosophy. It's all political tit for tat. And I think again, the fact that most of us are not interested in getting to the crux of the issues, it's I don't like this person, therefore I'm going to vote for the other side. As if, like, I mean, say what you want about Trump, I mean, he's at least closer to the preserving of the Constitution than Camilla. So why go completely to the other side? And again, I see this a lot with boomers. Pence felt like he was slighted by by Trump, and so he's voting for Camilla. Like, what is this? So anyway, I'll let you respond, and then you can have your good night. So
I would say that the majority of these people, they didn't like Trump when he was in, but they went along because, you know, they were still going along with the machine. Some of them, I think Kinzinger didn't, but Liz Cheney, I think she voted with Trump like, I don't know, 100% of the time, you know, whatever. And, you know, of course, Mike Pence was his VP. These people, these particular Republicans are going against Trump, in my opinion, primarily because of money or war, you know, their connection to, you know, wars or things like that, things that behind the scenes, they're not principled conservatives. Even, and many of the ones who still are going with Trump, a lot of them aren't all that principled either, you know, because if you look at the House and the Senate and some of this stuff, look at Mike Johnson, all these big bloated bills that the Democrats have, the Biden administration has put forward, they're signing them. They're still sending all this money. I mean, there's a handful of congressional Republicans, House and Senate, who push back. They're the constant ones. I think we know, you know, Chip Roy, you got Rand Paul, you got the Freedom Caucus. Those are pretty much the ones who are going to be pushing back against stuff. All the time, it's the same group. DeSantis was a part of that group. I think he was a founding member, just FYI. But their allegiance is to something else, and it ain't America, you know, or their own pockets. You know, I mean, these people are not, but this is what I'm saying, why it's so important to pay attention to who you vote for. Because, like, even locally, like before you are sending this person to Congress, before you know, the federal Congress, they probably came from the state Senate or House. They probably came from, you know, did they work in the mayor's office and before they went to the state house? You know what I mean? Like, a lot of these people they've been in the machine for a while. There's background. There is they have a voting history. They have remarks that they have made on certain topics. A lot of these people, they're not a Trump who just this is their first, you know, foray into politics. A lot of these people have records. We don't check them. We're not checking them. And so they get to these positions and then they are there forever. Why the freak is Mitch McConnell still in office? Why? Oh, I know why. Because he owns the biggest Senate PAC, you know, out of all the Republicans. He literally campaigned against Trump in 2022. This is crazy. We don't even talk about, you know, how Mitch McConnell, I mean, y'all know I'm like sometimes, I'm mostly not Mitch, but sometimes he does do some very smart strategic things. But Mitch is a mother. Like Mitch is a backstabber. Mitch done some egregious things when it comes to Trump's presidency and getting
Think you should breaking up bad.
conservative things done. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah, I think Keisha's internet is acting up.
Yeah.
put in office. And he might as well. He's not outright saying, huh? What happened?
Your
You hear
internet's,
me?
yeah, we hear every other word. Your internet's chopping.
Yeah, it's
Oh
breaking up
gosh,
bad.
of
You're
course
not
it
even
is.
your point getting lost. That's how bad it's breaking up, to be honest.
Oh, really?
No, but you're saying
Yeah.
you're saying these
Yeah.
folks are rhinos and that they are bought and paid for, and that's why they can so quickly and so easily, you know, vote for Camilla.
Primarily, and I'm saying
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say is that if you can hear, is it still breaking up?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay, the last thing I'll say is I was talking about Mitch McConnell. He might not be outwardly, I'm voting for Camilla, but privately, how he spends his PAC money, the biggest PAC in the Senate, owned by Mitch McConnell, he might as well be. That's what I'm saying. So these people, they get elected and they stab us in the back. So pay attention to who you're voting for, even locally, because they go up, they rise through the ranks, and then they become the Mitch McConnells, and you never can get rid of them. Anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you vote if you haven't already. Bye.
Will be.
But
yeah, I mean, we just paid. We just showed these cringy old women saying, you know, giving all of these examples of politicians who are either voting for Camilla or not voting for Trump. So politicians aside, I mean, these lay women in this clip who have this kind of I can't stand Trump. My I guess take on that is, you know, when you look at these women in particular and their age demographic, you do have this sense of we feel like we've progressed. We feel like we moved America forward, and Trump is trying to take us back. Trump is basically threatening the progress that we've made. And so it's from that posture that we feel like, you know, this election is so important. We need to get Camilla in. And so although what Quisha is saying might be true to some extent when it comes to the politicians being bought and paid for, these boomers aren't bought and paid for. They're just lay people who, again, feel as though Trump is a threat to the so-called progress that they think they made. But anyway, go ahead, Blanche.
What was the question?
It's not so much a question as much as it is just your response to that clip.
Again, and I'm gonna just say this: it's easy to vote to support Kamala Harris. You get to keep your friends, keep your family. You get to keep your friends. That, like, I don't know. I think a lot of it is social conformity too. These women, again, they watch CNN, they watch MSNBC, like they believe it. Like, so these old people, and I guarantee their grandchildren are stone cold liberals. Like, everything around them is going to say Kamala is great, Trump is bad. So they don't know anything. They just repeating, you know, what they've been told over the past, if we think about it, 8 years. You know, I don't know how, you know, mind control and propaganda works in depth, but I can imagine 8 years or something is pretty much going to brainwash you if you ingest it. So these old women, and also these elderly women, they're just par for the course. Like, I mean, they're not going. Just think about the shirts they wearing. Like, they all trying to wear shirts, thinking they doing something revolutionary by wearing a shirt with all that mess on it. Like, and like you said, Chad, people on these grassroots level believe this stuff. They believe it, and so to them, this is why this is so dangerous. Kamala Harris could say she wanted to destroy America. It doesn't even matter at this point. It's because of what she represents. A woman being president means that you pretty much managed to defeat capitalism, racism. You managed to defeat all of the isms, the patriarchy. You managed it. If she becomes president, you managed to defeat it. And they believe, in my opinion, that when she is president, her being president is going to somehow right the ship. The fact that a woman is there, and again, this goes back to this baby boomer mentality what the guy mentioned, that they took for granted how things work, you know, how things got built, how America is what it is. These people think because Kamala is president, things will automatically become what they want to see. I'm like, you are very foolish and naive, because it will not. Because what you are even seeing, you're thinking it's bad when it's not. It could be a lot worse. And so what Kamala is proposing is going to be a lot worse, even though it won't seem that way, because people with sense are going to be like, she's crazy. Those people be like, she's doing a good job, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely right. So before we close out, I wanted to just, I guess, make you guys aware of something. So Chuck and I had the privilege of linking up here recently. That's why I wasn't in town last week. I was there in Detroit, and we were having a discussion on camera, and we're going to be releasing this in the coming weeks. You're not going to want to miss it. Some very important information coming out of this, and it's thanks to you all, especially those of you who are members of the channel. Y'all made this possible. Y'all, with your monetary contribution, were able to help this come into fruition. And my plan is to do, so I'm going to release this in kind of a documentary form, maybe like a 40 minute to an hour and a half documentary, depending on which direction I go with it. And I've been working on it for the past week now. So I'm excited to get that out. And I'm wanting to go up to Atlanta next and have a sit down with Blanche and do the same thing over a different subject. So yeah, I just want to genuinely express my gratitude and my thankfulness to those of you who do contribute financially to this channel. I'm not pocketing the money and buying sandwiches with it. Like, I'm trying to put it toward real content, real thought-provoking content that moves the conversation forward. We talked this evening about some heavy things, some deep things that goes beneath the surface, and those are the kind of conversations that I'm interested in. I mean, people like to say, like, people listen to me and say, oh, like you're trying to stand against Trump, or you're trying to come against Trump, or you like, who are you even voting for? And it's like, you're missing the point. I think that there's a lot of history in this country that I think a lot of people sleep on. And because of that, I feel that we are continuing down this downward spiral. And my desire is to educate, my desire is to edify. And that's what that's why I'm doing this live stream. That's why I am working on these projects, because I'm not content with the conversation that's being had currently. So I'm trying to do my little part in furthering the conversation. So, in deepening the conversation. So thank you all for making that happen and bringing that into fruition. I'm excited for you all to see it. Let me read these last supers before we close it out. Let's see here. Let me see here. Where did I even leave off? Here we go. Okay, I found it. So did I read this one already? Yeah, I did. Michelle Macon. So let's go on to Robert Lamoa. Thank you for the super chat. He says, is it moral to ignore those who are poor because they were born with disabilities or
fell ill?
What, like, so the black against that blue background or green background is really messing up my ability to read this. Ability or fell ill. Okay, fell ill. And do I have a choice to help them or not? Yeah, I mean, you have a choice to help them or not. And the fact is like, I think people take for granted the fact of, and the importance, I should say, of the nuclear family. Why is it that we look past our own nuclear families and the resources that exist therein and seeking to basically capitalize on, expand, hone those resources so that way our affairs are our problem instead of outsourcing it to the state, outsourcing it to somebody else as though it's somebody else's responsibility. I know plenty of people who have children with disabilities. My wife's aunt has a son with disabilities. He's 30 years old now, and he lives with her, and she takes good care of him. And I think that's noble and commendable. If you know somebody within your own proximate area or whatever who has some kind of disability or what have you, and you feel inclined and you feel convicted to help this person, whether it be monetarily, whether it be through just mentoring or whatever the case may be, or trying to find some resources. I mean, my mom, she takes care of a young man who has disabilities, and there's private sector programs that exist here in Texas that puts these folks to work and give them money for an honest day's work. So there's such things that exist in the private sector. This notion that we should default immediately to the state, default immediately to government to take care of these outlier situations, I think is the wrong way of looking at it. And unfortunately, this kind of statist mindset is a result of our education system, among other things. And so I think we complicate the answer when we shouldn't. I feel that when it comes to these situations, there's plenty of charities and plenty of nonprofits and organizations that exist in the private sector that seeks to go after human trafficking, that seeks to assist the poor and seeks to help the so-called disadvantaged and the disabled and so on. This notion that the government is supposed to do something about it, I think is the wrong way of looking at it. So,
he asked, is it moral to ignore? I mean, you help who you feel you want to help. I mean, at the end of the day, though, it shouldn't be the government's responsibility. It shouldn't be. And I try to tell people all the time, the government helping you is going to end up bad, because the more help you need, the more they got to get involved, and then you're going to wake up and they're going to be in control of every facet of your life. I mean, why do y'all want it? We make these arguments about what about this? What about them? The Bible says the poor are going to be with you always. So we're always going to have poor people. So it's a moot point. Like, if you want to help somebody, help them. But as far as the government, paying somebody to not work or paying somebody because I don't agree with it, because the end result is going to be horrific. Like, no.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like the point that I'm making. I feel that when it comes to my position, that we shouldn't have government welfare programs, that we shouldn't be okay with the government's move towards socialism. I think people misconstrue that, or misconstrue me, or misinterpret me to be saying, you know, that we shouldn't care about the poor. If that's what you take me to be saying, then you are simply misinterpreting me and misunderstanding what I'm trying to say. I'm not advocating to just, you know, to hell with the poor. That's not what I'm saying at all. As a believer, as a Christian, as a follower of Christ, who himself talked about we as his disciples caring for the poor and helping where we can. I mean, he gives the story, the parable of the Great Samaritan. It's very obvious that we as Christians are supposed to have a heart for the poor, but it's to the extent that you have leftists and Marxists who try to exploit that biblical principle to advocate for government socialism. My request, or my recommendation, is that you don't be misled by that sort of exploitation, if you will. That's not me saying to hell with the poor. So that's not what I'm saying.
And it's up to the individual, who produces the resources that they may want to give on to someone else to determine who, in fact, is actually in need of it. Let you be the one to decide it. I mean, and that's just one example. But I mean, charity can come in a multitude of ways, not just simply, say, for example, giving someone who's starving, or someone on the street to ask for $1 or whatever the case may be. Let it be your decision. You know what I mean? Because only those of us who are with discernment, and those of us who are closely connected to individuals who may be in need, we are the ones who are best suited to determine what, in fact, may help them. You start talking about politicians, and not to say that Robert is suggesting this. I'm just using his comment as an opportunity to make this statement, because those in government, for example, I mean, they're not doing it for the purpose of beneficence. They're trying to buy your allegiance, because it's not theirs, right? They're taking something that they themselves did not produce. And so what's happening is they're simply trying to gain the allegiance and the subservience of one group at the expense of another. And to add insult to injury, and they don't know what those people are in need of anyways, because what does it even mean, in fact, to struggle or to be in need? And this is how you get a lot of these social movements, whether it be for the purpose of protecting farmers back in the 1930s, which gave rise to the Agricultural Adjustment Act, or whether you're talking about the Federal Housing Administration or the United States Housing Authority, because now everyone needs a home, right? And so everyone's job needs to be protected. So we need to fight for a mandatory minimum wage, so that everyone has the monies that they need in order to buy the things that they, or that they need, or that they want. So it's just a bad way when government starts getting involved, because all of these so-called rights are just bastardized examples of these kind of fake notions of charity. And it really does a number on the social fabric in terms of how we relate to one another, and how our sense of not just the dignity in the way that we view our fellow man, and the way that we view ourselves is tarnished, because we don't even have the opportunity oftentimes to even show our fellow man the goodness that is potential within each of us, because they have robbed us of the opportunity to be charitable, because the monies that you would otherwise spend on those who are in need is taken from you.
Yeah.
From government. It's like, I can't even afford to be charitable. I wish I could. I'm getting taxed up the wazoo. And it's like, well, you don't care about me. I do care about you, man. I wish I could help you, bro, but I got kids and a wife, and hey, ask the government for it. They took half my money before I even touched it.
Right. Yeah. Go ask them. Got one from Nick TBR. He says, totally irrelevant to the show, but for Blanche, thoughts on Shannon Sharp doing an interview with Camilla and calling her auntie. Pandering, shaking my
Oh
head.
no, you know he gonna act a fool. You know, but big old Buck, tell him, Blanche.
Oh, silly Buck.
Silly Buck Shannon.
Silly Buck Shannon. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't say, "Hey, girl." Yeah, I mean, listen, you know these people are. It should be obvious now that these celebrities come out are obviously paid to endorse. It's not even like it's just. I mean, come on, y'all. It's obvious at this point. I mean, she's making around. It's funny that you see the black vote trending down for Democrats overall anyway, aside from this Kamala thing. But it's funny how like she won so supposedly she won a debate against Trump. She's leading in the polls, and yet you still going to the chitlin circuit. Like, it's not making sense to me. Like, why are you if you're winning and you do why are you still going to the chitlin circuit? Like, why are you going to these people's podcasts? These degenerates. Like,
Right.
why are you doing it? You know what I'm saying? If you're winning, and you're I don't.
It's hard to Shannon Sharp. Folks think he good anyway.
Shannon Sharp is an idiot.
You're right. Live streaming himself while he having relations, talking about something he didn't know how Instagram worked. Man, stop it. See y'all. Y'all thought I was gay, but see, I ain't gay. What a
mess.
What a mess.
DT, $3 super sticker. Thank you. Appreciate it. We got one from Wax, gifted 5 memberships. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Chris Creative says, I voted for Donald John Trump and against the Maryland AB Constitutionality Amendment 7. Women have been deleted by 2 MS-13 illegal aliens in Virginia and Maryland. Wow. There you go. Got one from Donald Lyons, says, Chad, if you were going to vote, what's the alternative? Another party will never get the votes. I think he meant if you're not going to vote. And that's the thing. I never said I wasn't going to vote.
You never said that.
I never said that. And the thing is like, I just wish people would listen. Like, I just wish people would listen. I feel like people, like, they come into conversations not to listen, but, they hear a thing and they think that you're saying something else. Like, no, listen to the words that I'm saying. I'm very intentional with my words. I choose my words carefully. And if there's something that doesn't make sense, simply ask me instead of assuming that I said something I didn't say. I never said I wasn't going to vote. I've said on a number of occasions on this show that I was voting for Trump. Why is it that we're so afraid to further the conversation, though?
Because you're going to require.
Why is that? I mean, this is, after all, a podcast. We're talking for 3 hours. We're not just up here doing a pep rally for Trump. We're having a conversation. That's the way these things work. I'm not trying to be bashful or anything like that, but I just want people to listen. That's all. That's it, and that's all. Let's see. Willie Doc, $2 super, says, glad y'all are back. Thanks for the content. Thank you. Appreciate it. 96 to life. Yet Chad said he wouldn't run for office. How do you, quote, get to the crux, unquote, of the issues without doing something drastic like running for office? I don't believe I have to run for office to get to the crux of the situation. Why can't we at this level have conversations? Why must I run for office? The fact is, I'm self-aware enough, and I think I have a pretty good pulse on where America is to know that I could never win public office. I could probably win at the local level, but even that is going to be difficult, given the fact that most people are conditioned to be statists. And I know, knowing myself, I could never pander never pander in such a way that I'm going to win a majority of the vote in this current political climate. And I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm not going to put my family through that. But just because I'm not willing to run for office doesn't mean that the things I have to say aren't important. Doesn't mean that I can't move the conversation forward from the private sector.
Yeah, it's like when the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. It's just like, all right. I mean, worst case scenario, I know, Chad, in the past, you told me that you were, I think you even shared it with the audience, that you had moments where you contemplated whether to join the ministry. I don't know if that's something that you still think about from time to time, but it's like, it's just, you just know, like, okay, it's time. It's always those people who are like reluctant. Because I always tell people, I wouldn't have met you guys if I wasn't beat over the head and pushed constantly. Yo, you gotta get, start get an Instagram page, start a podcast. You gotta do something. So you got too much. You gotta say something to somebody. And I just was like, all right. And I just start lazily doing stuff. I still halfway don't even like doing social media. And then here I am today. But it's always those who are the most reluctant who are oftentimes just foisted into situations where it's like they get that calling, that voice, call it whatever you want to call it. And it's like, all right, I think it's time. I think people are ready. But to your point, Chad, I just don't think people are ready for you. It's like, I can't even, why waste your time? It's like, you gotta let me know when you guys are ready. When you're ready, then maybe I'll run for office. But you gotta change. People have to change first, man. People gotta change first. Your representatives they're not going to. Nah. Government is it's its own thing. The government does what's best for government. You got to be a check on that, because you have to really, truly, and not you as in 96 to life, but the proverbial you have to know intimately exactly what it means to be free. What does freedom mean to you? What does it mean to live the good life, as the Greeks used to say? What does it mean to you? You have to act on that. You have to act as the check on government. And we're to the point now where, we are here because of us.
Yeah.
Say whatever you want to say about the politicians. They tremble, right? They live in perpetual fear of us all day, every day. That one day, maybe, but
they'll get found out.
Yeah, even for me, it's just like, I think about this populist rebuke of the establishment. I don't even know what this movement is or how it characterizes or truly defines itself, and that in and of itself frightens me. Because people are scary. It's just human nature. It's a scary thing. I don't think we take it for granted sometimes. But yeah, I'm ranting. Go ahead.
No, I mean politics, and I'm obviously this didn't originate with me, but politics is truly downstream of, among other things, culture.
Yeah.
And again, like given our current state of things, I do believe that if I ran for office, I'll lose in a landslide, because of the fact that most people don't want what I'm selling. And I will say, though, that when you consider the Uncle Tom films, when you consider, let's just say Uncle Tom Part 2, I have seen the needle move as a result of that film and other such movies and content. And so I do feel like the needle is moving. I do feel that I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing right now at this particular season. And perhaps when the time comes, if the time ever comes, I will consider it. But right now is not that time. So
I don't think David Lyons, I don't think he was saying this to kind of defend him a little bit. I don't know if he was saying that you said that. I think he was just probably saying, like, as an example, like for someone who is cynical and just completely dejected and over the whole thing, like how, I don't know what righteous recourse would those individuals have. Maybe not you per se, but perhaps someone else. I don't know. It's just one of those open-ended questions.
Yeah. Perhaps I just misread it. I guess I misread it to say. Like,
I'm just saying
Chad
maybe because I'm
aren't.
just because David Lyons. I'm just going off of his because he's
Yeah.
always here in the comment section. He doesn't typically
Right.
say ridiculous things. So I'm just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. So I don't know.
I wasn't trying to say that he was saying something ridiculous. I was just saying that like
Because
there
people have
was no
said,
there's no animosity coming from me toward Lyons in my response. It's just merely to say that like I did think that he was saying that Chad, since you're not voting, to which I was responding and saying I never said that I'm not voting. But yeah, if you weren't saying, if you were not saying that, then I do apologize. And then our last super is from Jackhammer 23, says, I like the hat, Blanche. Is this your merch?
No, this is Leatherface's merch. Leatherface. This is his made in God's image, and he has some other stuff too, some other gear. But this is Leatherface. You can find him on Instagram. Literally at Leatherface on IG.
Cool.
And can I say one thing about socialism and as it pertains to the Bible? Kamala Harris brought up the Good Samaritan story in her speech at the church at Newburgh. And I'm gonna say this. So the Good Samaritan story, you go read the story, the person came and they helped the person. Now, if the person was there the next day and the next day and the next day, would they be getting help from people? The answer is no. So what you got to understand is that the Bible is written in context. You are supposed to help someone, give them the gospel, and then they do what? They go and help themselves. This is not a situation where you just take care of able-bodied individuals for the rest of their life. It's not how that works. And so if you watch the scripture, the Bible talks about giving the poor the good news of the gospel for a reason. And the Bible even says when you give to the poor, you give directly to God, because money doesn't benefit poor people because they have poor spending habits and they have a poor relationship with money. Money doesn't benefit the poor. So again, this whole socialist narrative being put to the Bible is foolish. God is clear when God gave the 3 talents to individuals, and you can even call that socialism. But at the same time, what was the expectation of the talents being given though? The expectation was you were to take the money, you were to invest it, you were to make the money grow. So I can't call that socialism. Again, the one person that took the money, the talent, and buried it, when Christ came back, he said, I knew you was a cruel master, that's why I hid mine. He took from him and gave it to the person that had doubled his stuff to 10. And then he told the person, you should have at least put the money in the bank to gain some interest. And instead you just buried it. So again, socialism is not a part of God's plan at all. God is a farmer. God believes in seed, time, and harvest. God doesn't believe in you sitting down, taking handouts and waiting for somebody to take. If a man don't work, he don't eat. God is very clear on this. So this notion that we're supposed to take care of grown people is insanity. That is nowhere in the scripture, nor should it be in real life. At the end of the day, if you are a grown man or person, individual, it is your job to take care of yourself. Once your parents get done, you're 18 and over, it's on you. I'm sorry. So I don't sympathize. We're talking about what about the downtrodden and the poor. If you talk to most people that are down on their luck, it is a mindset problem, not an ability problem. Now, if somebody's handicapped, that's different. If somebody is sick in the head, that's different. We're talking about able-bodied people, which are 99% of the people, receiving lifetime benefits at the expense of taxpayers. No.
Great point. That's actually a good place to leave it. Thank y'all for rocking with us tonight, and joining in on the conversation. I'm not sure what we'll talk about next week, the last Sunday before the election. I know I will be doing a live stream on election night. I've been invited by several people to appear on their podcasts and their live streams, and I'll have to respectfully decline. I think I'm going to do my own. So yeah, if you're interested in that, then I'd love for you all to be back. So anyway, like I said, be on the lookout for the documentary that I'm doing with Chuck. It'll actually be out before the Comrade Yuri, which will likely be released sometime early next year. So anyway, thank y'all. Love you all. God bless.
Thank y'all. Love y'all.